Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching third and final part of What If Naruto Has the Soul of a Legendary Dragon. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Always wasting no time, let's start the story.
Main bedroom at Namikaze Estates. 8:10 p.m. Hana was facing away from the bed when Naruto and she arrived. Turn around Tenchi-hun. Naruto smiled and said, I hope you like what I did to the bed. Hana turned around and gasped at the change, and he placed his head on her right shoulder while breathing hotly on her neck. What do you think? Did he ask? Fun. Smirked Hana. According to her, the standard bed had long since been replaced by a sizable depression in the ground, which contained a sizable cushion, numerous pillows, and what appeared to be a sheet of furs. Cultivated from naturally deceased animals, of course. As well as cushioned stairs that led gradually down into the bed, which was roughly mid-thigh deep. All in all, it appeared to be a massive dog bed. Glad you like it because I was hoping you'd help me break it in. Naruto laughed and slurred into her ear. Before making out with him, Hana twisted in his grasp and grinned. Oh, I'm sure we will both enjoy breaking it in Taiyo-kun, she said. Happily mated, Hana and Naruto cuddled in their new bed while Hana watched him gaze at the mate mark she gave him. A golden dragon with a dark brown wolf curled up under its wing, and smiled at him before giving it a gentle kiss that sent chills down Naruto's spine. Naruto grinned at the sight of Hana's mate mark, a golden dragon in flight with a brown wolf running beside it, and thought, yes, today was definitely a good day. He had his mate, his new bed, and a wife, and he had also kept his word to his mother. He looked down to see Hana soundly asleep. Rest in peace, Tenchi-chan. He kissed her chastely and said, sweetheart dreams. She closed her eyes and silently listened to Naruto hum a tune as she woke up to her favorite sensation in the world. Her feral side was quiet in Naruto's presence. For once she closed her eyes and smiled softly, blushing as she remembered their activities from the previous night, and she could feel the sticky mess between her legs and was actually happy about it. It was clear that Hana wanted nothing more than to lie there with him. Otherwise, she would have gotten up. Naruto smirked as he felt her pull closer to him and hummed a little louder so she could hear the song better. Naruto loved the mate mark he gave her, and he loved watching it ripple across her skin as his chest rose. It looked like the wolf was running right under the dragon. He grinned softly as he recalled their actions from the previous evening, and he was glad that his Ka-san had forced him to pop the question before taking her home, as it made the evening even more memorable. He would have to buy her something when they left this plane again, which reminded him. Hana-koi, if you're awake, just tap me. You don't need to move or get up, Naruto said softly. I need to tell you something. Hana tucked herself closer to his chest and tapped his side with her fingers, indicating that she was awake. Good, Naruto said. Listen, Aniki made a deal with the Shinigami. I am aware that he did not elaborate on the events involving the gods, but he consented to grant us immortality in return for a few individuals who had been evading death. Naruto caught Hana's attention as her head jerked up. Naruto, are you implying that I'm... She didn't really know what to believe, so she left the answer open-ended. Smirking, Naruto said, yes, Hana-chan. He said, you're immortal. After a moment of looking down, Hana said, what was the deal? She doubted it, but she had to know. She didn't want to be involved in some twisted scheme. The souls of Madara, Uchiha, Hidan, Orochimaru, and Kakuzu are the price for this, but we were going to be killing them anyway, Naruto said. Scowling slightly, Shinigami-chan agreed to give me and Aniki immortality, along with any partners we so desire, because they had cheated death. We didn't want that broadcast, so we didn't say anything earlier. For the sake of immortality alone, someone might attempt to approach us. Hana nodded, saying there was nothing to protest and the deal was good, so we can't die, is that right? As in, at all? Curious, she asked. We won't pass away from old age, Naruto said, shaking his head. We can still be killed in combat, but by the time I'm done with you, that will be extremely difficult, he replied. Naruto nodded, a little anxious about how she would react. Hana looked down for a minute, weighing the advantages and disadvantages. After nearly 10 minutes of silence, Hana turned to face Naruto and grinned softly, saying, so I get to stay with you forever, forever. With a smile, Naruto gave her a gentle peck on the lips and said, obviously not, I'm not that easy to get rid of, he said. Then, I can deal with it. Hana laughed and grinned as she got off. Naruto got out of bed and went to the bathroom, completely nude. I'm going to take a shower, she said, looking over her shoulder, smirking as she saw Naruto following her as she swayed her hips as she went, saying, it's cold though and I'm not sure the water will be hot enough. She left Naruto feeling bothered and hot. Don't worry, Tenchi-chan, Naruto said, laughing, and hastily ascending the stairs of the bed he hurried to the bathroom, saying, I'm sure it'll be hot enough for you. He halted abruptly and made 2 kage bunshin before they hurried back to the bed. Hana laughed from inside the bathroom as she turned on the shower and ran some hot water. When Hana saw Naruto enter the bathroom, she smirked and said, "I'm glad he figured it out. I'm still a little sore from last night, but I want him again." "Of course you do. He is your mate and he must pleasure you accordingly." "What the hell? Who are you?" Hana said, "I am your feral side. Since Naruto mated with you last night, I am also part dragon, so we are both more powerful enough of that, though, take your mate again. Ya. Geez, you'd like nothing more than to stay in bed and fuck all day, huh?" No answer. "Damn it. I will enjoy my time with him, but I refuse to do it every chance we get," she thought, but she chose to ignore it and decided to heed its advice because he was already here and she could smell him wanting her when she woke up. Start short, lemon. If you don't like it, don't read. If you aren't old enough to legally read this, go to the next bolded line. As Naruto opened the sliding door to the shower area, Hana took a step back when he saw her leaning against the wall. He grinned and moved closer, pressing his body against hers. "Last night was great, Taiyo-kun." Hana wrote, however, "I wonder if it was an isolated incident." Sexily, she asked. Naruto gave a low growl in response to the jab. He had worked hard to win her approval and would not tolerate such an insult. "I promise you it wasn't." At the end, he said something that made Hana shiver, but she was secretly grinning because she loved it when he made such a strong statement. His hands trailed up her sides, giving her goosebumps, and when he reached her breasts, he backed away enough to cup them and begin fondling them. Hana moaned in gratitude and threaded her fingers into his hair, letting her head rest back on the wall as Naruto began sucking on her left tit. His left hand was gently massaging her right breast, while his left was running 2 fingers along her nether lips. Naruto kissed her and slid his tongue into her mouth, knowing that she was already wet despite the water running down their bodies. "Stop teasing. You're annoying me and not helping," Hana said. Grabbing his head and forcing her tongue into his mouth, she pulled back and looked at him, enjoying the attention he was giving her but wanting the main course now, not later. Naruto grinned and grabbed her right leg, lifting it up as she said this lustfully. She then grabbed his penis and gave him a few jerks, causing him to grunt. Before setting him down at her entrance, he quickly entered her and remained there for a moment. He pulled out and thrust back in as she wrapped her arms around his shoulders and began making out with him. He deliberately maintained a slow and steady pace, which Hana was kind of enjoying. Although it was fun to go fast, she could feel her orgasm being prolonged as he made sure to hit all the right spots. She wasn't sure if he did it unintentionally, but it felt damn good. They were still making out when Naruto pushed her back against the wall because he was nearing the end of his life and wanted to make sure Hana had her orgasm too. Hana groaned loudly as Naruto pulled almost all the way out before plunging back in, and he swiftly took one of her nipples into his mouth before repeating his process. Naruto just loved the feeling of having her pussy squeeze him. With a smirk around her tit because he was also close, Hana picked up her legs and wrapped them around Naruto's waist to allow for deeper penetration, resting most of her weight on him while keeping some on the wall behind her. Naruto smirked around her tit, indicating his pleasure, and then let go to ram himself into her rather quickly. Hana smirked because she enjoyed being rough when their climaxes came. "Ha-na-chan, I'm coming." Naruto grunted out loud. He said just as his cock twitched and he buried himself deep inside her. Hana settled for moaning loudly. While biting into his mate mark, he felt her juices running between his legs and smiled. Although they were both panting, he barely held her up his own legs, feeling like jelly after their wonderful shower. "Thank you, and lemon. That was good, Taiyo-kun," Hana said with a sly smile as she pushed Naruto away. However, she stated, "We really need to take a shower." Naruto nodded in agreement, and she smiled before the two of them began washing each other. It took them a good 30 minutes. They took their time, okay, before they emerged feeling refreshed and squeaky clean, and Hana noticed that the bed was gone. "After last night, I thought it could use a wash," Naruto said, laughing at the shocked expression on her face. "Aside from that, I need some sheets for it." Naruto paused and gave it some thought before he said, "Hana-chan," he uttered those words. "Yes, Naruto-kun?" As she brushed her hair, Hana posed the question. "Have you ever used a birth control method?" Still pale, he asked. He couldn't see the smirk on Hana's face, but she turned to him and tapped her chin with her finger, saying, "No why hun?" Innocently, she inquired. "Hana-chan," Naruto said, hanging his head, "did you have to ask after all we did?" "It wasn't that he wouldn't want children. He just didn't think he could care for one at this time," he said, sounding a little down. "Silly, of course." Hana laughed. "Only during Naruto's heats are Inuzuka women fertile until my next cycle. We are safe. Fortunately, those only occur once every 3 months and last for a week," she said. "In other words, they only experience periods once every 3 months. With a sigh of relief in his mind, Naruto said, I apologize for the freakout. Hana-chan, if you became pregnant, I'd be thrilled, but right now, I'd rather not have one. Perhaps after we've finished all of this, he said. I understand, said Hana, nodding. In any event, I told the girls that we would have lunch together today, and since it is 11:45, she glanced at the clock. I'm going to leave Taiyo-kun. See you tonight. She smiled and said, but we have to go to Mom's for dinner. I want to tell her about your proposal. See you then, Naruto replied with a smile of his own. I must visit Oba-chan. Hana nodded, and the two of them started off. We are going to need help fighting Itachi and Kisame. With Sora and Anko. Unknown place. After killing Deidara and Sasori, Sora and Anko were now looking for Zetsu and information about the organization's base of operations. The battles were drawn out, but the two mates prevailed. As they leapt through the trees to their destination, Anko sighed. That Sasori guy was a pain in the ass. Every single one of his weapons was poisoned. She complained. I'm not that weird either. Frowning, Sora said, you're telling me. What is the name of that sexually confused guy? Deidara. To get close enough to kill him, I had to switch to Sage mode, man. Furthermore, he goes ahead and later blows himself up. I'm very fortunate that my armor is resistant to Balor's explosions, because otherwise, I would be dead right now, he said. At least I am impervious to poisons. Well, poisons from humans. I'm glad we discovered that I possess the chakra of the poison dragon. Injecting enemies with it is a lot of fun, Anko said, turning a little fangirlish at the end. You see, among dragons there are certain chakra types, just like human chakra types. However, dragon chakra types can also include poison, speed, strength, healing, fire, black lightning, etc. If a dragon has a certain type, then they can control almost anything of their chakra type, or use it to increase their own abilities, as depending on the chakra types. Rather simple, no? Anko, having been around snakes and I&T department, is a poison chakra type. Since she had been using them for so long, she can manipulate just about any human poison and about 50% of demon poisons. She could also send her chakra straight into an opponent's body, much like the gentle fist. However, her chakra could either burn away, paralyze, go dormant, etc. Plus she didn't have to be so direct with it. As long as she hit somewhere, she could move her chakra to wherever she needed it in the body. However, it was very chakra taxing, so she mostly used it on enemies she wanted to beat in less than a minute, or prisoners. Yeah man, that had to be helpful, haha Beheim. Sora grinned at her. He uttered those words with a menacing grin. Anko said, oh yeah, a lot of fun. In reality, it was a training exercise. His poison worked damn well. After I finally tore his damn heart out, it took me nearly 30 seconds to clean myself, she said, her smile still intact. Sora laughed and said, I'm glad you had a great time. Then he had a sudden epiphany and smiled lustfully, saying, oh Anko-chan. Before he spoke, Anko gave him a cautious look. Imagine what you could do with your chakra if you could change it from a poison to something more, he said, saying songily pleasant, he remarked. Pleasurable. I know some poisons that stimulate the sense, but that would make us end faster and I don't want that. Honey, when we get back, you're not leaving the bedroom for a few days. Anko pondered for a minute before her own smile spread. The two friends accelerated their pace and burst out laughing at their new notion as Sora laughed. I'll be more than happy to accommodate you in any way, Habiheim. Noon with Hana, Kurenai, Yugao, and Shizune all smirked as Hana entered the dango stand per bar. Looking radiant, she sat down and placed her order, then turned to face her friends, who were all staring expectantly. All right, Kurenai said. Well, what? Still high from this morning? Hana asked. You came in here like a girl on crack, Shizune said with a laugh. Will you sit there looking dazed, or will you tell us how he was? Red in the face, Hana said. Why do you think I'm just going to tell you? She spoke tremblingly. Yugao laughed and shook her head, saying, we all recognize that look. Hun, he needed to be good. You can't hide that kind of information from us anymore, can you? She posed a rhetorical question. Since Hana still appeared to be arguing about it, Kurenai became impatient and said, look, either tell us how he did or I'll go tell Sume you're in heat and Naruto has been looking for you, desperately, she said. Despite her shocked expression, Hana hung her head and said, all right, he was fantastic. She squealed and said, oh, the date was amazing, it was nice, but nothing particularly noteworthy. He then showed me his favorite spot in the village. Her voice trailed off as the girls became enthralled. Then he what? Kurenai said. Grabbing her hands, the girls glanced around quickly before turning back to Hana, and Shizune's eyes wandered down and gasped loudly enough for the others to hear before adding their own. Fortunately, they were in the back, and the day was relaxed. Hana laughed uneasily and thought, well, they saw the ring. She went on to say, Then we made out for a while before you proposed to me." She held up the ring, and the girls immediately congratulated her and were thrilled to see such a lovely ring. After that, he took me home, and he had his entire bed converted into a dog-style bed. Which, I might add, is crazy comfortable in any case. We went on to then, this morning, we parted ways, she said. With a slightly anxious expression, Shizune said, "Can we see your mark? The ring is really lovely." They all gasped again and grinned at the sight of such a lovely mark after Hana laughed and lowered her collar for them to see. "Wow. Hana, it's quite lovely. I'm happy for you. When will you tell your mother?" Kurenai inquired. After giving it some thought, Hana shrugged and said, "Probably tonight. Would you please refrain from spreading this?" The girls nodded and resumed discussing whatever the devil it is that girls discuss after she said that. Tower of Hokage. Noon. The secretary looked up, grinned, and said, "Of course," as Naruto approached the desk and said, "Naruto Namikaze, here to see the Hokage please." Before giving Naruto the signal to go upstairs and enter, the secretary spoke into an intercom on the desk. "Please give me a moment." Naruto returned the smile and went upstairs, smirking savagely as he arrived at the Hokage's doors, raising a foot to kick them while shouting, "Oyobaa-chan. I want to discuss something with you." He was immediately given evasion training, where he had to avoid Tsunade's fist. "Brat, don't go blowing my doors in like that," she snarled and then sat down again. All right, Naruto laughed. "Will you erect some obstacles?" "This is private information," he inquired gravely. "What's so important?" Tsunade said, nodding and placing chakra into a seal on the desk. She inquired, "Is Jiraiya in town, to start?" The blonde Hokage nodded, and Naruto went on, "He must be present. He's strong, and Konoha will need him for this plan. As much as I hate to admit it," Naruto remarked. "Are we talking about Akatsuki?" Tsunade nodded. The squad arrived, took a look at Tsunade, and Naruto nodded before Tsunade dropped the barriers and called for Anbu. "Go find Jiraiya and tell him if he isn't here in the next 20 minutes, I'll ban Icha from Konoha's bookstores." The men in the squad gulped and vanished. When Jiraiya entered the window 5 minutes later, he scowled at Naruto but said nothing. "What's so important that you have to interrupt my research?" "What?" he inquired. Speaking, Naruto said, "Akatsuki." Jiraiya's expression darkened as he turned to face Naruto. "How do you know about them?" "They're after Jinchuriki. I am a former Jinchuriki and they will be after me so they can find the Kaobi. Why shouldn't I know about them?" jeered Naruto, mocking Jiraiya during the exchange. Jiraiya looked at him. "You're just a chunin. While you are obviously strong, you can't expect to take on a S-rank criminal," he replied. Naruto responded with a frown. "Not alone. No, that's why you're here. I may not like you, however. I will admit you're strong, and when Akatsuki shows up next week, I want you to be here. Otherwise, this is gonna be a shitfest for the village," Naruto responded. Tsunade gave Naruto a startled look. "How do you know they will be here next week?" she inquired. Naruto let out a sigh before he could speak again. He received 2 nods and the barrier was reactivated. "Don't ask any more questions and I'll answer everything afterwards. Agreed?" he said. "Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki will be coming to Konoha sometime within the next week. I don't know the certain time, but that is a good time frame from when they were last spotted. Dragons like to be summoned to the physical plane because flying in the home plane gets too crowded. We have been routinely summoning dragons and letting them scout the countryside since they can fly high in the atmosphere. Very few can notice them, Itachi being one. I need some help because I'm sure between me and Hana-chan we can take Kisame. It's Itachi I'm worried about. I don't have anything to fight him with," he stated. After a brief period of silence, Jiraiya spoke. "I can deal with Itachi. The Toad Sage mode makes me impervious to all genjutsu, so I'm the best to fight him. Are you sure you and your girl can handle Kisame?" Jiraiya inquired. Nodded. "I just need her for backup and assistance. You may want to have a few of the Junin standing by to make sure we get out alive though." Tsunade gave a nod. "The signal will be a red hawk in the sky. Your area will be surrounded with Anbu so they cannot escape. Guy, Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai will be there for assistance. However, they will only interfere at your behest." "Jiraiya, Naruto," she continued. "Hi," was their reply. "Good, now, this is how it's going to work." Tsunade grinned. Compound Inuzuka. That evening Sume received a message from Hana asking him to prepare a small dinner for the evening. Sume was genuinely quite pleased and knew what this was for. Akamaru was wagging his tail and Kiba was unaware that Shiroi would be joining them for their small feast. Naruto was anxious as he and Hana approached the compound. He was going to announce his impending marriage to a clan leader's daughter. Hana gave Naruto a sigh. "Honestly, you'd think that after all the teasing Ka-san put us through, you wouldn't be scared to tell her," she responded. With a nervous laugh, Naruto said, Maybe, but I still hope she takes it well. As their animal companions looked on, Hana stopped him outside the gates and immediately started a tongue war. Hana drew back and said, "Better now?" Hana grinned and said, "Good, because we are here." Naruto nodded as if they were about to leap out and bite him. Naruto gazed at the doors with a nervous gulp. He followed Hana's lead. The door opened, and Sume looked up from the steaks she was cooking. "Ah, Hana-chan. Naruto-kun, good to see you. I mean, Hana, must you be so scarce?" she joked. "Sorry Ka-san, it's just easier to sleep with Naruto because we train every morning," Hana said, with a slightly dejected expression. Hana and Naruto realized that Sume had said something incorrectly. When she gave them a devilish grin, she smiled brightly and said, "So sleeping with Naruto-kun, huh? I guess I'll get my grandpups sooner than I thought." Naruto and Hana both turned red, but Hana nodded in agreement after a minute with her mouth hanging open. Sume looked at Naruto and laughed at the very end. Sume let the threat linger, saying, "Never thought that would backfire. She better not be pregnant or..." With a swift motion of his hands and a shake of his head, Naruto responded, "No, Ka-san, we came here to tell you something else important though." After glancing at both of them, Sume nodded and said, "It can wait until dinner. Naruto, please go get Kiba. First door on your left upstairs." Naruto nodded and left, but Sume turned to face Hana. "How was he?" Sume asked with a sly smile. Hana reddened once more. She responded, a little shocked that she was telling her mother this. "Good, very good. I enjoyed it as much as he did." Hana appeared taken aback as Sume laughed and said, "That's good to hear. I know you enjoyed that new bed of his." Since no one else would be asked to design a bed for an Inuzuka, Hana nodded and said, "Oh, don't be so shocked. Who do you think he asked for help when he wanted it designed?" Naruto and Kiba descended the stairs and struck up a friendly conversation following them. Shiroi and Akamaru hastily lay down close to the low table and curled up with each other. Kuromaru sat beside Sume's seat, while the Heimaru triplets quietly lay down behind Hana's. Small talk was made while the meal was swiftly served to keep Sume from noticing. Hana had concealed her ring in her pocket as Kiba finished his last bite. Naruto glanced at Hana, who nodded. To attract their attention, Naruto cleared his throat, still a little anxious. He said, "I have something I wish to say." Under the table, Hana took the ring out of her pocket. "Sume-san, Kiba, last night I asked Hana to marry me and, to my great luck, she agreed," he stated. Kiba appeared a little stunned, but Sume was grinning broadly. Hana extended her hand and held it before Sume with a slight smirk. Hana said, "I hope you don't mind, Ka-san, but I wanted to show this to you." With a squeal, Sume took her hand. She pouted slightly and exclaimed, "Oh, this is beautiful, damn it. I knew I should have gone after him." Instead, however, when her kids shouted, "Mom," she laughed at their combined voices. Naruto laughed and said, "I know this is kinda sudden, but well," he looked at Kiba with apprehension because he didn't want to be mauled by Kiba, but he knew Sume wouldn't mind after all. Righteous brotherly rage is similar to righteous female rage. In response to her fiancé's behavior, Hana shook her head. Sometimes the silliest things could frighten him. "We already marked one another so, by dragon laws. We are married. The ring and the wedding will be for formality, plus I want to see the look on all those girls' faces when I make out with Taiyo-kun here on the altar." Hana laughed. Naruto stared in fear as Kiba glanced from him to Hana and back to him. Then, he opened his mouth and sighed, saying, "Fine, you beat me. I can't even use the alpha argument, but, Naruto, you hurt my sister, I'll kill you, dragon or not." Naruto gave Kiba a scowl. He answered, "Keep your threats, I won't hurt her." Sume gave a headshake. Naruto whipped his head to her so quickly you'd think he had whiplash. "Okay, Sochi's, that's enough." She smiled as an Oni mask materialized behind her. "Yes, Naruto. I'm going to call you Sochi and you're going to call me Ka-san, understand?" she said. Naruto nodded hastily. "Good, now let's finish dinner and let the two lovebirds go fuck like rabbits." "Mom!" cried Naruto and Hana as they flushed, and the sound of laughter from the family filled the courtyard. Week-long time skip. Training Ground 50. The training grounds consisted of a straightforward, open clearing surrounded by trees. Although there was plenty of space for a fight, it was primarily utilized for training in stealth or evasion. Naruto and Hana were only engaging in simulated combat. They had their equipment with them, and since they knew Itachi and Kisame were nearby, it was a light workout alert to their surroundings. Their partners lay on the grass and watched them spar. Itachi and Kisame had just left a tea house nearby. They had heard tales of Naruto's strength, but Kisame had brushed them off right away when Enbu saw them coming in. They decided to report to the Hokage rather than follow them. Hana and Naruto were flying through their fictitious battle. This spar's rules are to twist and avoid each other's blows rather than block. Both of them leapt apart and turned to face the trees in a slightly nervous tone. Naruto exclaimed, "We know you're there, come out." The clearing echoed with a deep chuckle. Itachi and Kisame emerged from the trees. Kisame remarked, "Good job sensing us, boy. I've been hearing some rumors about you, but personally, I think they're bullshit," he responded. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He said patronizingly, Perhaps not. Do you know how to use that oversized meat grinder you call a sword?" Before Itachi spoke, Kisame snarled. He said in a monotone, "Naruto-kun, please come with us and no one needs to be hurt." "Naruto-kun isn't going anywhere, traitor. We will fight to keep him here," grunted Hana. Itachi shut his eyes and resumed his speech. He was about to continue when a voice from behind them echoed across the clearing. "In that case, we will have to kill you and take him. Kisame, leave him alive." Jiraiya remarked, "If I were you, I wouldn't do that." With two small toads perched on his shoulders, the toad sage turned to face the two S-ranked criminals. A huge error. With both hands thrusting forward, Naruto screamed, "Suen Byakurai, twin white lightning bolt," more conscious than Kisame. Itachi avoided it. Kisame, he also escaped, but because he was too slow, he got a burn mark on his left side. "Good job, Brad. Leave Itachi to me. Kisami's all yours." Jiraiya grinned and leapt over to Itachi, dragging him to a different clearing. With Naruto and Hana pulling Samahada from Naruto's back, Kisame scowled at him and said, "Brad, I'm gonna make you wish you hadn't done that. This is Samahada, he's going to enjoy eating your chakra." With a laugh, Naruto exclaimed, "Sanzai Karabakashi, Senko. Blur from existence. Flash." He spun the katana around a couple of times before assuming his swordmaster position. He smiled and said, "Let's dance, shall we?" Kisame laughed and made an odd noise around the clearing. A sizable number of ice structures appeared out of nowhere. All of them broke at once, exposing ice devils. They looked lanky and were a little taller than the typical human. The majority of them were humanoid ice sculptures, with ice spikes emerging from each joint and occasionally just sporadic body parts. They gazed hungrily at the two half-dragons with beady red eyes with a crazy sparkle in his eyes. Kisame remarked, "I hope you like them. They just love to cut people's limbs off." With a growl, Hana turned to face the Haimaru triplets, and Shiroi hurried off to confront them. "You still have us to deal with and you're not getting away that easily, you shark freak," she responded. Naruto sent Kisame another Byakurai. Just as he was about to respond, he yelled, "Enough talking. Let's fight," and charged the swordsman who was recuperating. He swiftly lowered his blade, but Samahada quickly blocked it after activating her Shikyaku no Jutsu. Hana entered the battle and skillfully supported Naruto's blows. At this point, neither ninja was moving at full speed, but Kisame was more focused on strength with a few of his attacks. They were able to keep him largely on the defensive at their current pace and level of cooperation. Although the two Konoha nins were not entirely aware of it, the electricity that was flowing through his system was playing a significant part. Alongside Jiraiya and Itachi, Jiraiya was attempting to hit the Uchiha prodigy after avoiding another fireball. Fortunately, Itachi's typical tricks would be nearly useless against the Toad Sage because Ma and Pa rendered Genjutsu useless against him. All of Itachi's punches and jutsu, however, were somehow deflected or blocked. Jiraiya said, "Please give me some wind and some oil." When facing the young Uchiha, the two older toads become strangely silent. Itachi's eyes widened slightly and he swiftly kawaramied out of the way as Jiraiya swiftly complied and exclaimed, "Gamayu Karyu Enden. Toad Dragon Flame." A dragon of fire that joined with the oil and wind to become a raging inferno. As was to be expected, Jiraiya was keeping him alert. Pain's threat of death if they didn't claim the Kaobi was the only reason he hadn't fled before a number of genuinely challenging opponents could appear. Itachi had hoped they could swiftly defeat the Jinchuriki and depart. It hadn't been like that. With a shout of, "Karyu Enden no Jutsu," Fire Dragon Technique, Itachi ran through hand seals. He exhaled and hurled the dragon in the direction of the Toad Sage. Teppadama no Jutsu, Water Bullet Technique, was shouted by Pa in a hurry, and when it struck the dragon, a thick stream of steam was produced. Knowing that it was frightening to not see the opponent, Ma exhaled and used the Great Breakthrough Technique, Daidappa no Jutsu, to blow away the steam and discover an empty clearing. The three heads turned around, searching for their adversary. "This one is a slippery weasel, Jiraiya boy," Pa replied. After Jiraiya nodded, the two sages gathered Sage Chakra for a rather unusual attack. "Yeah, but we have to kill him. He's too dangerous to be left alone anymore." Alongside the Haimaru triplets and Shiroi, the majority of the Ice Devils were low-level demons similar to the invasion a few weeks prior. The four Ninken had paired up right away like a bull tearing through wet tissue paper. They were generally tearing through the devils naturally. It helped that these devils melted if the fire got to be too much for them, and all the Ninken had a fire affinity. They were able to stop and gaze at their masters during a brief break in the fighting. Kisame was recovering from his paralysis. but they were fighting well. They exchanged glances and intensified their efforts. They were on their way to their masters, who needed them. With Naruto and Hana, Naruto had already unlocked level 2 of his resistance seal. Kisame was just quick enough to avoid Naruto's lightning-fast blows or, more often, block them. He was able to fight at full strength now that the slight paralysis caused by the lightning was subsiding. To be honest, he was furious. It was not intended for this brat to be this strong. He was the class Dobi, and Zabuza had hardly been harmed by him. Hana felt irritated. She had hoped to assist Naruto, but he was too quick for her to use effectively, so she had to support and enhance his fighting style with kunai, which she didn't carry very often. However, Naruto was pleased to see Kisame being pushed back before he could complete it. He only needed a little setup. He swiftly delivered 3 cage bunchins after pushing Kisame back, while the other 2 attacked in unison with the real Naruto, who completely dropped his resistance seal. One returned to Hana to explain his strategy and give her some kunai before Kisame became enraged enough to use his ninjutsu. He was swiftly driven around the training field. The cage bunchins were destroyed as he leapt back and swung. "You brats are good, I'll give you that, but I've had enough. I'll kill your little bitch, then I'll cut your legs off to make it easier to get you back to base," he replied. At that, Naruto snarled, but Hana grinned. Both guys turned to her as she said, "Taio-kun, don't get so mad. I am part bitch. Besides, I thought you liked that about me?" in a seductive manner. With a laugh, Naruto said, "Oh, I do. I just don't like him calling you that. You're my bitch. Bitch in the sense of female dogs. Don't assume I'm sexist." Kisame desired to perspire. "Whatever, I'm just going to kill you. Bakusu Shohan no Uck." He was hit by 4 cyclones that tore into his back before he could finish. The Ninken landed next to their smirking masters. That was the setup. Smirked Naruto behind Kisame. 4 exploding tags detonated, sending him flying forward and severely damaging his back with a growl. He drew Samahata closer to assault Naruto. He was never given the opportunity. A voice behind him yelled, "Futon! Suga! Wind style! Piercing drill!" When the Hana next to her Ninken vanished in a cloud of smoke, he realized his error a second too late to act. His eyes grew wide as Hana tore right through his back, transforming him into a jumble of organs and blood that flew everywhere due to her wind chakra. She smiled brightly at Naruto after landing, surprisingly free of organ matter. "You guys aren't going to help Jiraiya-san?" Naruto asked, laughing and turning to face the Junin that had landed in the clearing. Kakashi nodded. "If Itachi beats him, we are close enough to catch and kill him, so Tsunade said to cover you 2 first." Despite the fact that Bankai and Sage Mode were better suited for battles involving a large area, Naruto scowled at the lack of confidence in his abilities. "Taio-kun, let's go finish off Itachi. I need a shower and then a good night's sleep with my new favorite plushie." Hana sighed off to the side, sounding a little childish as she finished. Everyone nodded and leapt off, but Naruto said, "Fine, but I think it's over. I can feel the energy being emitted from here and I don't think even Itachi can survive that." The group laughed. 10 minutes ago, with Jiraiya and Itachi, while the 2 sage toads had accumulated the energy required for this technique, Jiraiya had been restraining Itachi for nearly 20 minutes in order for Pa to infuse someone with wind chakra. He had modified the Rasengan to work with his water chakra. He was not going to allow this traitor to escape unscathed. Unfortunately, it would require an insane level of concentration. Since Jiraiya was just standing there, apparently doing nothing, Itachi was hiding and wondering why. He had no desire to learn what a Sannin was capable of. As he hurried out of his hiding place, he was suddenly confronted by a wave of fire. He noticed a cage bunshin of Jiraiya to his right. He scowled as he launched an attack, allowing his Sharingan to spin wildly. The clone wouldn't have survived long in a normal situation, but the Sage Chakra was making it more powerful than the original. Eventually, Itachi simply exclaimed, "Amaterasu!" illuminating heaven, and erupted black flames from his eyes, destroying the clone. Sadly, it wasn't quick enough. However, Itachi was unaware of that at the time. He looked directly into Jiraiya's eyes and said, "Tsukuyomi, Moon Reader. Jiraiya-san, I am disappointed. I had hoped we could finish this without violence, but that seems impossible, so I will have to end this now." Itachi waited a moment for the effects of the genjutsu to manifest fatal error. Rushing forward, Jiraiya brought the 2 incomplete but elemental Rasengans and slammed them into Itachi's chest. Itachi barely had time to react before Jiraiya leapt away and the elemental chakras merged. Rapid absorption caused the swirling balls to briefly implode before exploding into a towering sculpture of ice. A lifeless Itachi with icy, lifeless eyes stood in the middle of Itachi's body, and it both abruptly crumbled, turning into a fine dust that blew into the wind. Just as Naruto's group appeared in the clearing, Jiraiya, who was panting heavily, released his Sage Mode. Naruto let out a whistle. He asked inquisitively, "Nice one, Arrow Senin Water and Wind Rasengans? Level 5, huh?" Jiraiya merely nodded his head in agreement. Itachi was exhausted from his battle. Everyone nodded. and Sunshine to the Hokage's office, where Tsunade was seated, saying, "Come on, Ba-chan is going to want to hear the story from us. Not so patient." Tower of Hokage. 11:45 a.m. Tsunade felt numerous Shunshins enter the room, and she tensed and then relaxed in her chair. Naruto and Hana arrived a moment later than everyone else, but with his typical flair he moved away from her and faced Tsunade. Standing at attention in a military tone, Naruto stated, "Chunin Naruto Namikaze and Chunin Hana Inuzuka reporting back with a confirmed kill of one Kisame Hoshigaki." Jiraiya straightened up. He said gravely, "Jiraiya of the Sannin, reporting back with a confirmed kill of Itachi Uchiha." Tsunade was pleased with their plan overall, though she was a little taken aback that it worked. Konoha had eliminated 2 of its biggest threats and, if Sora and Anko are successful, 3 more. Her face hardened after she smiled. She said, "Report. Naruto, you and Hana first." Naruto gave a nod. He gave a brief explanation of how Kisame severely underestimated them and how they launched a sneak attack. Fortunately, Kisame was one of Akatsuki's hardest hits. It would be difficult for them to add another member like that now that he is gone. The same is true of Itachi's shinobi caliber. Tsunade turned to Jiraiya, who proceeded to kill Itachi in his own way. Tsunade was impressed by how easily the 2 Chunin had defeated Kisame. Despite their simplicity, their efficacy is undeniable. After taking in the information, Tsunade closed her eyes and reopened them to congratulate the group. They all nodded, and the 2 younger shinobi were genuinely thrilled about the large sum of money. "Very good work, everyone. Hana and Naruto will be receiving S-ranked mission pay along with the bounty for Kisame. Same for you, Jiraiya. The Junins will receive a ranked pay for keeping the fight local. Thank you for your work," and you are dismissed. Before departing in their separate directions, everyone gave the Hokage a nod and bowed. Shunshin, mostly after getting lunch, Hana and Naruto quickly returned home to sleep in their new bed while surrounded by their ninkin. Time lapse. 1 week. Hana wanted to know Naruto's performance in bed had been, to put it mildly, excellent for the past week. Their first night was wonderful, but he seemed to be getting better every day lately, and she could have attributed it to their sex, but she wasn't sure because she didn't know much more. Every time he did something sensual or touched a sensitive spot, she became even more aroused. Although she wasn't whining, she began to question whether someone was secretly assisting him. This idea did not sit well with her, so she decided to find out what exactly made Naruto such a great lover. 2 weeks had passed since Konoha had murdered Kisame and Itachi. Naruto and Hana got engaged a month ago. Hana's development was pretty amazing. When she was at level 2 resistance seal level, she was able to avoid the majority of Naruto's attacks. Her natural flexibility allowed her to move around Naruto with ease, and she was quick enough to complement him appropriately. However, there were other factors besides training that contributed to the increase. There was no reason to laugh at her sessions with Tsunade. Although she lacked the control required for super strength, she was well on her way to organ repair and could quickly heal a deep wound. Note: repairs do not guarantee 100% effectiveness. Nevertheless, Hana found Naruto's performances to be a little perplexing. They were excellent at making love. He seemed to think of a new position or idea every day that added excitement. She was curious about where he got the ideas that led to this, but she wasn't concerned that he was cheating. Bar BK Place. Typical Kunoichi gathering at noon. Kurenai, Shizune, Hana, Yugao, and, somewhat unexpectedly, Hinata were all seated together and conversing. However, Hinata remained silent and blushed most of the time. She blushed at some of the rather unusual ideas, and Hana sighed. "I just wish I knew where he got the ideas. They're very well thought out and almost always bring something new into the bedroom." Kurenai gave a headshake. "As long as he isn't cheating on you, what difference does it make?" she inquired. "I mean, you enjoy it, right? Why should you look a gift horse in the mouth?" Shizune and Yugao exchanged glances before Yugao burst out laughing playfully. She said, "Why don't we just tail him to find out?" Before Hana stepped in and said, "I'm not gonna go spying on my fiancé just because he is amazing in bed," in a loud whisper. The girls were in a state of awe. A lot of contradiction? With an innocent laugh, Shizune said, "But if you know why he's amazing in bed, then wouldn't that let you both enjoy it more?" Hana didn't notice the look in her eye because she was thinking, but the other girls did. Like Hana, Shizune and Yugao were curious about how he recovered. The girls nodded, and the day was set when Hana sighed, "Okay, let's do that tomorrow. It's a Friday, so I have off from practices." With Sora and Anko, Anko let out a deep groan. "Man, could this guy be any harder to find?" she inquired. Sora sighed. "I knew he was good, but to travel this far in such a short time is amazing." Sighs. "Guess I'll just have to lure him out with rumors then," he replied. "Rumors?" Anko asked, casting a curious glance at Sora. Nodded. He's their information gatherer, so a rumor that the Sanbi has headed for the open sea would be too curious to ignore. Hopefully we can catch him this way, he continued. Why don't you add that Konoha has been asked for assistance with a Jinchuriki to subdue the Sanbi? Anko asked after giving it some thought. With a fierce grin, Sora said, I knew there was a reason I love you. She pouted a little and said, I thought it was because you love to pound me into next week? Anko laughed. As Sora laughed, he said sensuously, that's just a plus, besides you beg for it anyways, Hubbyheim. Good, because if you had said that was all, I'd leave you high and dry for a month, Anko said, laughing. Yes, she laughed. Anko chuckled while Sora's face went white. Come on hun, let's just get rid of this freak so we can get back to Naruto. I want to see if he proposed to Hana yet, she said as she accelerated. Sora matched her speed and shook his head, but he concurred with her. He desired to see his Otuto once more. 7 a.m. the following day, when Naruto awoke and saw Hana embracing him like a stuffed animal, he grinned. Throughout the night, she would always encircle him, and he had to confess that he enjoyed her neediness. When they made love nearly every night, he smirked at the thought of how much he enjoyed seeing her happy. Unfortunately, they didn't make love on the last 2 nights, which they referred to as off nights. He was quite pleased with the results of his extra training sessions. Knowing she wouldn't want to wake up early on one of her days off, he ran his hands gently through her hair. He ordered a cage bunshin to prepare breakfast and deliver it to them in silence. With his hands knuckled deep in her hair, Hana woke up as she had every morning since Naruto proposed to her. The way she cherished it, she scowled a little as she considered her friend's plans for the day. This was a bit excessive, but she still wanted to know. Nevertheless, she had consented, so she and her friends would follow him. As the door opened, she looked up to see another Naruto carrying a steaming bowl of ramen for him and a side of ham for her, along with eggs and bacon on a plate. She gave an eye roll. The smiling Naruto said, breakfast is served, Tenchi-chan. Hana returned the smile. Then she took her plate and tray and ate in silence, saying, good morning Naruto-kun, thank you for breakfast. After swiftly finishing his meal, Naruto took Hana's and his tray and went downstairs. As Naruto walked into the room, Hana turned to face him. After getting dressed innocently, she inquired, so what are you up to today, Taiyo-kun? Before answering, Naruto began putting on his typical Hyorin shirt. As he sat down to put on his sandals, he asked, Lee asked me for help with his training, so I'll be doing that this morning, but in the afternoon I have some personal activities planned to relax. Why? Hana gave a headshake. No reason. Well, I'm meeting the girls. I'll see you tonight, okay Taiyo-kun? She replied. Despite nodding, Naruto's expression turned playful. Tenchi-chan, what do you say we go on a date tomorrow like our first night? I'll take a room downstairs and change there tomorrow. You can have this room, he inquired. Hana grinned broadly. She exclaimed, I'd love that Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned, thinking, God, her positive attitude is contagious. He kissed her on the cheek and they woke up outside the door after he said, good, I'll see you tonight Tenchi-chan. Leaf Cafe. 7:30. The previous girls had gotten together, had a quick breakfast, and then began talking about Naruto's whereabouts and afternoon plans. They believed the first part because Hana had already told them what he had told her, but the second part was unclear. Hinata proposed, he might just be getting together with friends. Shizune added, he might be seeing a specialist in medicine. Kurenai said, a Kama Sutra expert? Hana was strangely silent as Yugao said, this is getting us nowhere fast, let's just go find him. After giving it some thought, the girls all agreed, but before they could begin assuming anything, they had to follow him around all day. Ground 9 for training. Shizune, Kurenai, Yugao, Hinata, and Hana arrived at the training grounds of Team 9 as they prepared to spar. They discovered Lee and Naruto rushing through some stretches. Lee's injury had clearly caused him pain, but his eyes were blazing with a fire. He would continue to improve. The girls stood in awe as the spar began. Instead of fighting, they were more like dancing around each other's blows. These two were clearly experts in their respective taijutsus. While Lee emphasized his style primarily with kicks and a few punches, Naruto relied on quick, direct punches mixed with unpredictable kicks. To give themselves time to rest and to give each other advice on their taijutsus, they sparred intermittently every half hour. Although the girls were suffering as a result of Lee's flames of youth speeches, Naruto appeared to completely disregard them. After listening to Lee and picturing Guy there, Hinata developed a newfound respect for her cousin. Well, she winced at that. Naruto offered to buy Lee bar BK for lunch, and she accepted without hesitation. Then they left. The girls followed in silence, wondering once more what Naruto would do in the afternoon. As they ate lunch at a quiet little cafe across the street, Lee screamed something about youth and ran away when Naruto waved goodbye. With a laugh, he began walking down the street silently. The girls rose and began to follow him across the rooftop. He continued to walk until he came to the Wolf's Claw weapon store and entered. The girls were unable to enter without raising suspicions from Naruto, so they refrained from doing so while getting some new equipment to replace the ones he had recently used. Naruto talked with Tenten for a good 30 minutes grinning. He left the store and created a clone to carry the equipment home before making his way to the nearby hot springs. They discovered that a number of the male shinobi were present when they got there: Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Neji, and, most unexpectedly, Sasuke. The girls chose to take a dip themselves since they were unable to follow them and, of course, had separate sightings. They hurried inside, paid, and then headed to the hot springs. Though Hinata was tasked with ensuring the boys didn't escape, they all went inside and unwinded. "This is relaxing, but I still wonder if we are going to figure anything out," Hana responded. Sighing, "I know he hasn't done anything interesting or suspicious all day except talk to Tenten a lot, and we all know she's hot for Neji," she responded. Yugao gave a nod of agreement. "I know, I wish we could find out, but it may take more days to truly figure it out," she replied. Hana gave a headshake. "If we don't find out today, I have a date with him tomorrow, maybe I can coax it out of him then," she replied after nodding in agreement. The girls stayed in the hot springs for 10 more minutes before Hinata gave them the all-clear to leave. After drying off and getting dressed, the girls followed the boys back to the roofs. They came to a halt at Sasuke's house at around 3 in the afternoon, and everyone went inside. They were playing poker when Hinata swiftly activated her Byakugan. For another hour or so, the girls sat down to be bored. Since Naruto always returned home by 6 o'clock if he didn't have a mission, the girls had given up by 5 o'clock. "Thank you guys for the help, but I'll take care of him tomorrow," Hana replied after nodding. The girls, who were actually a little worn out from skulking around all afternoon, went their separate ways. Hana hurried home and got to work making dinner while Naruto would not be aware of it. It was a way to say sorry. In gratitude for her efforts, he swiftly devoured the ramen feast that was waiting for him on the table when he got home. "I love you, Tenshinhan. I'm so glad we can be open and trusting with one another. I can't wait to show you just how much I appreciate that ramen feast tonight. Tomorrow will be perfect," Naruto whispered in her ear as he wrapped his arms around her midsection and pulled her close for an embrace. As they prepared for bed, he then dragged her into the bed and cuddled her tightly. Next day, Namikaze Estates at 6 p.m. Hana had truly exceeded her own expectations for tonight. She had ensured that everything was flawless. Her brief spying trip yesterday had left her feeling extremely guilty. With the intention of giving Naruto a night he would never forget, she had made sure she looked as good as she possibly could. She also intended to share with him the details of yesterday's brief spying trip. She had no idea that it would result in a rather strange evening. There was a golden lightning bolt down each leg of Naruto's black slacks. He wore a black jacket over a dark blue dress shirt. It was straightforward but elegant, and Hana could use the jacket if she became cold. Upon noticing the time, he grinned and proceeded to the living room to wait. He called up to her and said, "Hana-chan, the reservations are for 7. Hana answered, "Okay. Naruto-kun, I'll be down in a minute." She let out a breath and checked her appearance again, then grinned quietly and went outside and down the stairs. When she saw that Naruto was facing away from her, she grinned and yelled, "Naruto-kun, are you ready?" Naruto had a flashback to their first date as he turned around. Naruto was undoubtedly pleased that Hana had chosen something more seductive than the previous time. She was wearing red bracelets on both wrists and red high heels. She was wearing a tight-fitting black dress with no shoulders that ended at her mid-thigh. She was wearing her engagement ring and the same necklace as before. She wore a deep red lipstick that wasn't overdone, and a hint of mascara. "I dressed up so you could tear it off later," was practically shouted from her smirk as her hair fell around her face. Naruto shut his mouth as she laughed. Naruto grinned softly and remarked, "Wow, I thought you looked good normally, but this, you really are a tenshi on earth, Hana-chan." Hana reddened. Thanks Naruto-kun, you look good as well, simple but formal, just the way I like it," she grinned. Naruto reached out to her. He said, "Shall we go, Tenshi-chan?" Before they once more set off at a leisurely pace for the Dragon of the Leaf, Hana chuckled and took hold of his arm. 7 p.m. as Dragon of the Leaf arriving punctually, Naruto and Hana entered their preferred upscale dining establishment. They approached the maître, who gave them a gentle smile after recognizing them from their previous visits. Many individuals who had previously shown no interest in Naruto were now more open to accepting him after his heritage was made public. "Give him a chance, even if you don't respect him outright." Naruto noticed something and grinned as the maître hurried them to a booth. Naruto pulled his finger up to his eyes and asked, "Waiter-san?" "Yes, Naruto-san?" he asked as the maître turned around. Naruto said, "Maybe we could sit with one Shino Aburame." As Hana glanced around, she saw Kin Suchi and Shino Aburame. A rather apprehensive couple. Kin was looking around a lot, and Shino's bugs were buzzing a little. She grinned when she realized that Naruto had consented to sit with them through Shino's bug. Shino nodded as the waiter turned to face him, and they sat down right away. They decided to hold off on ordering their entrees until after they had ordered their drinks and appetizers. When Hana saw how anxious Kin was, she got to her feet. Girl, talk for. Let's talk. I need to powder my nose and I could use a second pair of eyes. Kin-san, would you please assist me? Kin gave a nod, and they left. Naruto looked over at Shino. He gave some advice, saying, nice date you have, you need to relax though. After a few seconds of staring, Shino answered, it is illogical for me to be nervous and, yet, I find myself anxious as to whether or not she is enjoying herself, he replied. Naruto laughed. Shino, bit of advice, just be yourself and let things flow. That's how it worked for me and Hana-chan. Just make sure she's comfortable and the rest usually falls into place, he stated. Thank you for your assistance, Naruto-san, Shino said, nodding. Naruto gave a headshake. It's just Naruto, Shino. Besides, I'm glad to help out someone who sees me for me. He was grinning. Shino just gave a nod, and his bugs stopped. The restroom. After entering, Hana hurriedly made sure the stalls were empty. Kin was wringing her hands when she turned to face her. Hana said, whoa girl, you need to calm down. Kin gave a headshake. Hana covered her mouth before she could finish, saying, I want to, but this is so nerve-wracking. I was a prisoner not long ago and then he took me out to eat a few times and now we're here in this high-class place? I can't. Hana sighed after saying, I said calm down, not fret over it. Look, obviously Shino wanted to take you here, so why are you so nervous? Before responding, Kin let out a sigh. I don't belong here. I'm no high-class girl. I'm glad he wanted to take me out, but I don't deserve this treatment, she groaned. In fact, Hana was a little angry. Why would this girl think she's not valuable? Hana said, drawing a startled expression from Kin. Whoever told you that is a moron? Shino wanted to show you a good time, so obviously he believes you're worth it. Are you going to tell me that you don't believe in his judgment? She inquired. No, but, said Kin, shaking her head. No buts, uttered Hana firmly before Hana interrupted her again. Kin blushed bright red and stammered. Listen, just go out there, sit down, look cute, and when you get back to his house, kiss him like he's the last guy on earth. Show him that you're worth the time. Kin, I don't know you very well, but Abarames don't take just anyone out on a date, let alone quite a few. Kin briefly glanced down before raising his head again and grinning broadly. Thanks Hana-chan, I needed that. You're welcome. Now let's go knock your boyfriend out of his seat, Hana said with a laugh. Kin flushed once more before the girls left. The remainder of the evening was spent in a convivial setting. After the girls returned, both Hana and Kin proceeded to humiliate the boys they were with unexpectedly. Shino opened up and spoke extensively. Naruto made the table much more cheerful by being his typical joyful self. By the time 8 p.m. arrived, Kin and Shino left after reuniting at the arm. Naruto and Hana walked slowly back to their house. Hana was feeling very upset. She knew Naruto might be a little irritated, especially after his remark last night, but she hoped he wouldn't be too upset with her for what her friends did yesterday. She prayed to herself that everything would work out. 8:15 p.m. at Namikaze Estates. When Hana and Naruto got there, they hurried upstairs despite Naruto's refusal to acknowledge it. He became extremely aroused upon seeing Hana dressed like that. When he saw Hana guiding him back to their room, he grinned. Get the lemon started. Please go to the following bolded lines if you are underage or do not want to read this. As they entered the room, Naruto discovered a lustful Hana tearing up the wall against him. She snatched his jacket and tossed it aside, then ran her hands up and down his chest. His hands were moving up and down her sides, causing goosebumps to appear all over her body before Naruto unbuttoned his shirt and Hana hurriedly kicked off her shoes. They abruptly split up after removing his shirt. She rubbed her hands sensuously over his chest and then his nipples. Naruto shoved Hana toward the bed because he was sick of seeing her so fully clothed. When they arrived, Naruto lowered her dress, and she emerged, beginning to slowly descend the stairs while he let his gaze roam over her body. A black lace bra and panty set with red swirls on top of her nipples and right over her now wet opening was what she had chosen. When she got to the bottom of their bed, she smirked and laughed at how clearly he was staring at her. She cherished her ability to arouse him. Hana asked in a seductive manner, like what you see, Taio-kun? In order to give him a good look, she grabbed her breasts and lifted them. With a gulp, Naruto answered, always Tenshi-chan. He unbuckled his belt and dropped his pants to show off the developing issue in his boxers. After jumping into the bed, he approached Hana and made out with her passionately. Not wanting to go for the prize just yet because she still needed to speak with him, Hana groaned into his mouth while softly massaging his thighs before sucking it like a baby. Naruto moved his mouth to trail kisses down her neck to her left tit after taking off her bra. After about a minute of ministrations, he switched to his right hand and continued to stimulate her left nipple gently. He ran his left hand over her underwear. She needed to talk to him before they continued. Even though she loved that he was getting so involved through her groans, she said, Naruto-kun, please wait a moment. Naruto paused and gave her a worried look. Worried? I didn't hurt you, did I? He asked. Hana gave a headshake. Listen, I need to get this off my chest. Yesterday, the girls and I followed you around. Why? Asked Naruto, who didn't appear particularly surprised. Seeing his perplexed expression, Hana looked down and said, I was worried about how good you were in bed. She continued, a little ashamed. You seemed to improve in getting me off every time we made love, and I was curious where you were learning how to do that. Sighing, so that's who I felt yesterday. Tenchi-chan, why didn't you just ask me? I'd be happy to tell you, he replied. Hana appeared somewhat taken aback. You're not mad? And you'll really tell me? She inquired. With genuine curiosity, he said, of course I'm not mad. I can see how it'd look. Do you want to know how I got so good? Hana gave an angry nod when he said, Oiroke no jutsu, sexy technique, and formed a seal. She became perplexed. Naruto was now in his female form, a stunning woman with a slightly round ass, double D-cup breasts, and 2 long blonde ponytails. I will use proper pronouns for the body, not the person from now on, Naruto stated. I simply practiced with a cage bunshin in this form, getting the experience from both sides and verbal directions. Hana's face was obscured by her bangs. That's it? She said in a strangely quiet voice. Naruto gave a nod. Yeah, that's all. I hope you aren't mad about this, she replied when she closed her eyes. She discovered that Hana was now holding her body from behind because Hana had both of Naruto's hands behind his back. She asked apprehensively, Hana-chan, what are you doing? While Hana's left hand moved to massage Naruto's tit, her right hand held Naruto's wrists to prevent her from moving. Hana, a little offended that Naruto hadn't simply asked her to work with his body, asked, You have been using this body to learn how to pleasure me? Naruto said, Yes, what's wrong? Her entire body is getting hot from the hand on her tit. She was genuinely getting turned on because she could feel Hana pressing her body against hers. As her hand began to move south, Hana questioned, So, do you like being in this form and getting pleasure? Answer truthfully or you won't like the outcome, Naruto-chan. Naruto reddened as she felt Hana's hand caress her lower lip area. Why yes I do, but not like this, I just wanted to. She moaned out loud as Hana's fingers slid into her folds, but she bit her lip and answered honestly because mates could tell when they were lying through their marks anyhow. As her finger kept going in and out of Naruto's pussy, she remarked, Wanted to what? Fuck something else so you could please me more? Why didn't you just ask me, Naruto? Between groans and pants, Naruto uttered, I didn't know you would want me to Hana-chan. Hana put another finger into her lover, who was now a woman. As she felt Naruto's body begin to press against her fingers and heard his breath catch, she grinned. She had to admit that Naruto was doing a pretty good job of massaging her finger with his pussy. I wouldn't have minded, but you never asked, Hana replied. Her rage had subsided by now. She was only doing it because it was new to her and, to be honest, she enjoyed the idea of strange things happening in bed. The next thought that came to her made her smile go completely crazy, and she began to really pump her fingers in and out of Naruto's pussy, so she whispered in Naruto's ear, Come for me, Naruto-chan, I promise I won't be mad. To be honest, Naruto had been having fun. The female her was only used to help with Hana during training sessions and as a distraction. Since the cage bunshins had always delighted in sleeping with Naruto, Naruto genuinely lacked the will to change. This is strange, and he enjoyed strange things in bed just as much as his partner did. Hana asked for her cum after inserting her fingers into her now slick pussy. Naruto was delighted to comply. Hana-chan. She shuddered. Splattering her fluids all over Hana's hand, she fell on her stomach onto the bed. As she licked her hand clean, Hana smiled and remarked, You taste good, Naruto-chan. As she caught her breath, still lying face down on the bed with her ass in the air, Naruto just smiled with a sly smile. Hana transformed into a muscular man and cried out, Oiroke yaoi no jutsu. Sexy male technique. He had Hana's marks and short, spiky brown hair. He had a big dick that was nearly 9 inches long and 2 inches wide, and he was thin and not very muscular. Smirking, Hana positioned his penis at Naruto's entrance and got a eep from her. Hana took Naruto by the waist and entered her pussy after leaning over and whispering into her ear, Since you like this form so much, why don't I show you just how much pleasure a woman can feel? Although she wasn't quick or rough, She stopped halfway through. Naruto was gasping for air after ingesting such a thing. She had never had a dick inside of her. But she had fingered and licked herself in this form without a hymen. After carefully inserting himself inside Naruto, Hana sighed when he was completely inside. Your pussy feels good, Naruto-chan. Are you going to stay quiet all night? Replied Hana. Naruto cast a slightly irritated glance over her shoulder. She said, You're too big, Hana-kun. Hana laughed. He pulled out and thrust back, causing Naruto to groan loudly. No, I'm not. You have plenty of room. You're my bitch now, hun. You're going to spend all night taking my cock up your pussy for that stunt. Hana whispered, leaning over to Naruto's ear. Naruto's gaze expanded. Gosh, I'm not sure if she's being serious or if she's just teasing me. With a sad expression, Naruto said, I'm sorry. Before he began to fuck Naruto pretty well, Hana grinned and pushed hard into his pussy before whispering into her ear once more, apology accepted, but you're still my bitch for the evening. Before he stopped and grinned, Hana thought something wasn't quite right. Even though he liked that position, before beginning his thrusts once more, he seized Naruto's left leg and raised it straight up. Naruto was ecstatic for sex. A woman's body felt completely different than a man's. The incessant fire burning in her loins was growing by the second, and she could almost feel every muscle twitching with each thrust from Hana. Hana was having a great time. In addition to being tight, Naruto's pussy was wet without much opposition. He was able to slide in and out. Hana now understood why Naruto enjoyed having sex so much, and the sensation of being inside his lover for a change was indescribable. Hana chose to push Naruto over the top after sensing his balls churning. Grasping the blonde's ass with a gentle finger, he reached down. She could feel Hana's cock twitching inside of her as he continued to ram into her recklessly, and she knew Naruto was getting close to having an orgasm. She was getting closer, but that finger was the final straw. Her vision became blurry as it passed her asshole, and she let out a high-pitched scream as she poured her own fluids over Hana's cock. Shortly after, Naruto vaguely remembered that a significant amount of cum was covering her inner walls and filling her womb. The sensation made her smile gently. Feeling Naruto's pussy tighten, Hana grinned and attempted to milk him for sperm before yelling, Naruto-chan. And thrusting so deeply that he struck her cervix, he pistoned a few more times. Hana waited until he felt his dick beginning to fill up before carefully removing it with a faint pop. Hana grinned at Naruto's joyful expression. This had been fun for him. Perhaps they could establish it as a routine. Changing roles was, after all, a good way to bond as a couple. After a while, Naruto recovered and gave the sleeping Hana a slight glare. She said, maintaining her feminine demeanor because she knew it wasn't yet over, That was mean, Hana-kun. You should have asked me to explore instead of using your clones. Hana scowled a little. Look, I'm sorry, alright? Now I have to ask, Naruto sighed, glancing at her. Hana returned the gaze. Ask what? Was his response. With seriousness, Naruto inquired, Did you enjoy that? He said, Yes, I did. Also, since you practiced with this form, I claim my right to fuck you like this at least once a week. Hana was silent for a moment before answering. Naruto appeared in disbelief. She was completely shocked when she asked, What? You want to do this once a week? Although I am aware that I liked it, was it truly that good? She asked herself. Hana laughed and he replied, Yes, once a week. You can't change my mind, so don't try. In addition, he thought to himself, I can understand why Naruto never pulls out. Coming inside of him felt amazing. Naruto was so horny that she ran her moist lips over Hana's cock. After he was tackled onto his back, she leaned down and whispered into Hana's ear, Good, because tonight doesn't count. She then snatched Hana's dick and slammed down onto it, eliciting loud groans from both of them. I'm going to enjoy being your bitch once a week. You got to be on top last time, so now it's my turn. She replied. She began bouncing up and down on Hana's cock without hesitation. Although Hana enjoyed thrusting, it felt even better to relax and let Naruto take control. Hana's hands moved up to knead Naruto's ample breasts, and his hips thrust independently to meet Naruto's drops when he sat up a little and began to suckle Naruto's tit while holding her ass and assisting Naruto in bouncing up and down. Hana was grinning. Hana began sucking her tit, and Naruto let out a loud moan. She enjoyed having her tits sucked. It was difficult to control the upcoming orgasm because Hana's dick was hitting her G-spot with nearly every thrust. After realizing this, Hana paused his nursing for a moment and said, I'm ready too, Naruto-chan, let's blow together, okay? Naruto just nodded and began applying more pressure to Hana's cock. Hana exclaimed, Naruto-chan, I'm go nna cum, as he exploded yet another heavy load into Naruto's constricted pussy. Naruto screamed, Hana-kun, come fill me again, as she impaled herself on Hana's cock like Hana herself in their other forms. She cherished the sensation of fullness. They dropped their justus and cuddled up to each other after Naruto slid off of Hana. End of Lemon. Many thanks to all of you. Naruto grinned and huddled behind Hana. You make an amazing lover no matter the sex, Tenchi-chan, he replied. Hana laughed. You're not too bad yourself, Taiyo-kun. I still can't believe you did that for me. I was slightly mad, but actually I was more flattered than anything. I mean, how many men would willingly have sex with a female version of themselves to please their fiancés? She inquired. With a laugh, Naruto said, not many. I'm just glad you liked it so much. Yeah, I did. You're still going to be my bitch later this week, you know that, right? Declared Hana with a smile. In response, Naruto grinned and said, I won't mind. Besides, we can now practice on each other in 2 forms. Naruto nodded, and they gathered the sheets before curling up and going straight to bed. Hana laughed. True, you horndog. Anyways, let's get to sleep. I'm tired. 7 a.m. the following morning. Once more waking up before Hana, Naruto grinned as he recalled their previous night's activities. Naruto interpreted the fact that the two of them could switch their roles as male and female in this way without significantly altering their relationship as a sign of love, even though some would consider it unsettling. He let out a sigh since he had to get Hana up for today's training. Hana still had some work to do, and Sora and Anko wouldn't return for another month. Just as Naruto was about to wake her up, he paused and a grin appeared on his face. She was a little cruel to him last night. He now had an opportunity to repay. Start with lemon. How fortunate you are to have 2 lemons in 1 chapter. The same cautions as before. Naruto began kissing Hana's neck tenderly, causing the sleeping beauty to groan with exhaustion. With a sly smile, he began kneading her right breast and sucking her left in an attempt to create some much-needed friction in her now warm nether regions. Hana's legs were rubbing against each other as her body stretched and curled. Seeing that she was moist and undoubtedly prepared for his next move, Naruto's free hand descended and gently rubbed her pussy lips. The sleeping Hana groaned in disapproval as Naruto stopped sucking her tit. With a sly smile, he moved down her body, then put his mouth close to her opening and held her legs open to prevent his head from being crushed before he inserted his tongue into her folds and began rubbing her walls with his moist organ. He licked her slowly from her anus to the top of her lips, eliciting a rather loud groan of approval from the awake Hana. Hana was ecstatic after spending the entire night having sex with Naruto. She was experiencing a wet dream as Naruto's tongue slid into her folds and his actions threw her into reality. She cried out loudly. Hana would normally be furious, but since she wasn't sore from the previous night, this was far preferable to waking up with his hands in her hair. With a loud, Naruto-kun, she seized his head and pressed it to her nether lips. Hey, rhyme. As he moved his mouth to her clit and inserted 2 fingers into her aching pussy, Naruto was grinning to himself. She had taken hold of his head and would not let him go until he had given her his whole pleasure, and he planned to do just that. As his tongue savagely attacked her clit in an attempt to get her sweet nectar, his hands began to piston inside her. As Hana's orgasm was coming to an end quickly, she made the decision to alert Naruto in case she lost it and was reduced to nothing more than bed linens. In addition, she enjoyed watching Naruto devour her fluids. She exclaimed, Taiyo-kun, I'm go nna-kun, as her hips arched into his mouth in an attempt to prolong the orgasm, and her entire body went rigid. Naruto swiftly withdrew his hands and used his tongue to stimulate her lips as he lapped up her fluids. Hana collapsed to the bed, a fine sheen of sweat covering her body as she finally stopped coming despite her heavy breathing. She thoroughly enjoyed Naruto's brief awakening. However, she was unable to do so for long because she soon discovered that she was carrying a large portion of her body weight on her neck and upper back. With her hips in the air, her legs were spread out so they were nearly parallel to her body, and she was looking directly up at a smirking Naruto. Then she said, Naruto-kun, pant, what are you doing? She sincerely hoped he wasn't thinking the same thing as her because he could delve deeply inside her. She adored this role. If he chose to begin right away, she wouldn't have time to hold her orgasm. Her eyes widened as Naruto grinned and positioned himself at her door, thinking, shit. Even though I will be sore, this will be well worth it. He lowered himself gently into her pussy and said, I'm going to thank you for your performance last night, Hana-chan. Besides, you can't have all the fun this morning. Hana let out a cry of discomfort as her eyes widened. She always needed some time to get used to this position. She was gasping for air, and Naruto gave her a worried look before giving her a little pump, which caused a loud groan. He leaned forward and grabbed her ankles, which allowed him to dive right into her moist pussy. After grinning and pulling nearly all the way out, he slammed back in, eliciting groans of pleasure from both sides. Hana reached her climax more quickly as he increased his steady pace, and the sounds of his ballsack hitting her ass with each thrust filled the room. Hana sensed her impending orgasm as her body began to stiffen. She wanted to wait and allow Naruto to enjoy himself as well, but she quickly abandoned that plan. Tenchi-chan, if you hold it in now, you'll be too sore to change tomorrow and make me your bitch again. He grumbled it was that she let out a shriek and poured her fluids over Naruto's dick to allow her to experience this orgasm and prevent his own from rising too quickly. Naruto merely slowed down. He didn't want to blow his load until he made her experience her third orgasm of the day, and she was giving him a hard squeeze on his dick. As he watched her pant heavily and felt her orgasm subside, he grinned with cries of, "Naruto-kun harder." He began thrusting more forcefully into her, leaving Hana ecstatic. It had been a wonderful first orgasm. This one had been a minute long, to be honest. She wished he would fill her pussy sooner rather than later. She wanted to spend as much time as possible with Naruto before her heat set in, but he was unaware of this. Naruto saw the telltale signs of Hana's own pleasure growing again as his own climax drew near. He grinned as he felt her pussy begin to convulse and his cock twitch as she experienced her final orgasm. Hana yelled, "Naruto-kun! Fill me, I want your baby batter." Naruto blushed a deep red but obligingly complied. Burying himself inside her and releasing streams of sticky cum into her fertile and willing womb, he even filled her womb with his cum as per her request. With a sigh of satisfaction, Naruto rolled over and slipped out of his lover with a gentle plop. He said wearily, "We just had dexterity training today, no practice." Hana laughed and held him while sensing his smoldering cock in her womb with some joy. She thought, "Wow, he really did fill me." The two lovers fell asleep in silence, but Naruto set the clock so Hana wouldn't be late for her medical appointments. Sure thing, sensei. End of the lemon. I'm grateful. Training grounds the following day. Naruto sensed a familiar chakra signature coming toward their grounds while he and Hana were training as usual. He motioned for Hana to halt and turned to confront a certain Sasuke Uchiha. He didn't have the brooder look, but he still had the same appearance as at the Chunin exams. With some civility, he said, "Naruto, I need to speak with you." Naruto nodded his head, but the two nins were a little taken aback. "Yes, what is it?" "I wanted to apologize for my actions towards you. It was uncalled for, and with my recent genjutsu rehabilitation with Kurenai-sensei, I have seen how much I really could have hurt your feelings." He continued, "Look, Kakashi had Kurenai put me in a genjutsu where I could do nothing but talk with the old me for hours a day. I was stupid, foolish, and immature," he explained, sighing as he saw the bewildered expressions on their faces. With a startled expression, Naruto said, That's pretty life-revealing. What made you rethink it?" Sasuke cast his gaze downward. "I heard Itachi was killed and the Sandaime told me that my clan was planning a coup against him, plus they planned on either killing you or turning you over to Danzo. No one deserves that treatment," he said with a rage in his eyes. "They were wrong, however. I will rebuild the Uchiha clan and restore it to its proper place of honor alongside the founding clans of Konoha," he said. Naruto grinned. He said, "How about I help you with that?" And Sasuke and Hana gave him a startled look. Sasuke said, You do that?" Naruto gave a nod. "You told the truth. You really want to redeem your clan. No more Avenger crap. Listen, I know Kakashi must have tested your affinity, so what is it?" Naruto inquired. Sasuke asked, "Lightning with a minor fire. Why?" Hana laughed as Naruto grinned and repeated, "I'm a master of lightning manipulation." "Sasuke, have you started it yet?" "I'm on stage 2, but I can't find a lightning jutsu," Sasuke said, nodding his head, his eyes widening as he spoke. Naruto flashed a radiant smile. Sasuke nodded, and Naruto created a clone to send with Hana before coming back to Sasuke. "All right, I'll teach you one now. This one is rather chakra intensive, but if you can manipulate it well, then you can start on the third step for manipulation." "Good, now let's begin." Girls gathering. Noon, a female voice yelled, "You did what?" From behind the dango stand and bar, the group, which included Kurenai, Hana, Yugao, Shizune, and Hinata, caught everyone's attention. Hana said, "Shush, not so loud, Nai-chan." Before everyone returned to their meals, she said, "Sorry," and kept scanning the area. With some confusion, Yugao said, "Care to repeat that, Hana?" "I told you that Naruto was using his sexy form to learn how to please me, right?" Hana asked, blushing, but nodding in response to the girl's glares. "Well, I was slightly pissed that he didn't just ask to explore more and take our time, so I kinda pinned him in his female form and finger-fucked him until he came in hard." The girls knew it wasn't the end, but she wanted to stop. She began to blush. "He collapsed with his ass in the air, so I switched to my yaoi form and called him my bitch before fucking him doggy style and coming inside. I then demanded that we do it like that at least once a week before he mounted me and rode me until I came inside him whilst he begged for me to fill him up," she continued. The girls were shell-shocked and all flushed. Had Hana been permitted to do those things by Naruto? It was unsettling as well as sexy. "Anyo, did he really beg for you to come inside him?" Hinata said softly. Hana blushed and nodded. Shizune let out an excited squeal. She grinned and exclaimed, "What a man! You bagged yourself a good one, Hana-chan. How can you be so sure that he doesn't just want to be a female?" Kurenai scowled while asking. Hana gave a headshake. "Nah, I was the one who made sure we would do it in the future," replied Hana. Shizune continued, "Besides, how many men would purposely make a shadow clone and mess around with it just to please his girl more?" she responded. After giving it some thought, the girls all nodded in agreement. "Sue, how was it?" inquired Yugao. Even though she was flushed, Hana replied, "It was amazing. Naruto's pussy felt like a hot, wet message and sucked hard every time I tried to move aside from that. You all have seen his sexy form and that thing looks drop-dead gorgeous." She was also getting a little nosebleed from some naughty thoughts. "Can we talk about something else though? This is kinda one-sided since I'm the only one sleeping with someone right now and it makes me nervous." The other girls glared at Hana but dropped the topic as the other girls burst into smiles. Location unknown. That evening, as it stood atop a pitch-black tower surrounded by flames and the cries of the tortured, a dark voice declared, "We will soon take down the mate of that new dragon and claim our rightful place on the humans' plane. No longer will we be stuck here. We shall destroy all who stand in our way, dragons, humans, angels. All will fall before our might." Higher-level demons stood in front of a mass of lower-level demons below as it shook its red fist in the air. It exclaimed, "Long live Akuma, devil." The crowd chanted, "Long live Akuma, long live Akuma, long live Akuma." Until a new one began. The crowd began to slowly switch to, "Long live Beelzebub." Before the giant creature grinned a sick smile and Beelzebub's name was chanted throughout the crowd. A pit fiend of the highest caliber was Beelzebub. His canines were the size of a thumb, and his teeth were as long and large as a meaty human finger. Its tail had a whip-like barb at the end, and its large claws on its hands and feet could rip through steel like tissue paper. It had two large leathery wings that protruded from its back, where a trail of horns began on its head and extended down its spine. It was covered in red scales. Soon he would exact revenge on that damned Ryujin. The person who restored his authority would be destroyed by him, the Senko Ryu. When Naruto felt his mate's body pressing against his own, his eyes opened and he grinned. After defeating Itachi and Kisame, he huddled closer and reflected on the previous month. Her performance in the battle with Kisame had pleased him, and she had gradually gained control of her wind chakra. He had only targeted her in the jutsu area because she had successfully finished her elemental training. With half of Guy's weight, she was able to avoid him at level 1 resistance seal because she could coat her claws in wind chakra. She concentrated mostly on backing him up from a distance or slipping around his own attacks to land quick, extremely sharp strikes. Although she could likely match Kakashi exactly, her strength had only slightly increased. She specialized in swift taijutsu and a few helpful windjutsu techniques, making her an overall high Anbu level practitioner. She purred a little, and he grinned as he ran his hands through her hair. He always enjoyed seeing his partner's reactions. He stopped to think about the adversaries they would be up against. In addition to Pain and Konan, there were Madara, Uchiha, Hidan, and Kakuzu. She might not be quite as good as them, he feared. Nevertheless, it reminded him of something his sensei had told him at the conclusion of their sage training. Writer. Yoko, Demon Fox, style. Jutsu without flashback. After 2 hours of maintaining his transformation, Naruto turned to face his sensei, who gestured him toward him. Naruto walked to his Aniki and sensei, panting a little. "You are doing very well, Naruto, but I have one last thing to warn you about this form," Sora said with seriousness. Naruto's face twisted in bewilderment. "What do you mean, sensei? I thought this allowed me to access my dragon side fully?" he inquired. Sora let out a sigh. "That is both true and untrue. It allows you to access your dragon side as fully as your body can withstand right now. However, the true name of this should be half-dragon soul release. The human body can only allow half of the full transformation except under extreme duress." Sora responded while Naruto listened intently. "To fully manifest your dragon soul, well, it's different for everyone. For me, I went into a rage because some demons killed my father and were trying to kill the rest of my family. The ensuing battle caused me to earn my title as Ryujin. Just so you have an idea of the power difference, in my current state, I could destroy a pit fiend in about 20 minutes if I was ever able to manifest my soul again. It would take no more than 10 seconds, Sora continued. Curious, Naruto questioned, "Wait, you said, Aga, and does that mean you can't fully manifest it?" Nodded. "Yes, that's correct. The dragons have told me that, in order to activate this mode, you must find the one true reason that would allow you to kill anyone without remorse," he clarified. Naruto scowled. "Sensei, that sounds very undragon-like. I mean, Dragons are protectors in every sense of the word. Why would manifesting a real dragon require killing without remorse? He pondered. Smiled. Good question, Naruto. The answer is simple. The one true reason for me to kill without remorse was to protect my family at all costs. Now I have felt the same way at times with Habihun, but I don't think it's quite that deep yet, he said as he allowed his pupil to express it. You could hear the gears turning in Naruto's head as his head lowered. So, a dragon's reason to kill without remorse is to protect someone's life that you consider to be above anyone else's life, replied Naruto. That's the basic gist of it, yes, Sora nodded, adding, it differs with each person. Naruto's frown slightly subsided, but he continued to look at his sensei. Why are you telling me this, sensei? It's good to know, but wouldn't I search for this person to achieve more strength to protect those I care about? For that matter, wouldn't Hana be that person? Naruto looked directly at Sora, who smirked and said, I just hope that I'm there to see it. Sora laughed and said, the person won't be found by searching. Naruto, as for Hana, that's a possibility, but I don't believe that your dragon side believes her to be that precious quite yet. As for why I'm telling you this, Sora's face became serious before leaving for Konoha's Chunin exam. Naruto grinned and the two brothers gave each other hugs. Writer Tenchi style. Kai. Flashback without jutsu. Feeling his fiancée awake, Naruto grinned. He wanted to finish Akatsuki so he could concentrate on giving his wife the life and, with any luck, the family she deserves. Anko and Sora were due back today. With his hands running through her hair, Naruto proceeded to wake up his fiancée using her second favorite method of waking naturally. His tongue was inside her moist nether lips during her first encounter, but that was a story for another time. Feeling Naruto's hands stroking her hair, Hana woke up with a gentle smile. He gave her a lot of attention, which she always loved. She thought back on the previous 7 days. Most of it had been spent in bed. They were aware that they would be hunting the remaining Akatsuki when Sora and Anko got back. To put it mildly, their decision to spend as much time together as possible had been rather pleasing. With a sly smile, Naruto ran his hands through Tenchi-chan's hair and said, Good morning, Tenchi-chan. After making sure he would continue by rubbing her head into his hands, she responded, Good morning, Taiyo-kun. Sora ni and Anko ne are expected back today. Would you like to greet them? He inquired. She smirked and said, Besides, it has this lovely massage setting that is wonderfully active right now. She nodded her head but huddled closer, saying, Yeah, but they can wait. I'm not letting my comfy pillow move for now. His lover gave Naruto a low groan of gratitude as he laughed and rubbed her scalp. Glad you enjoy it, but we have to get ready in half an hour or we will be late, he replied. Hana merely gave a nod and resumed his gentle chest purr. Akatsuki base. Concurrently, the base was filled with explosions and the sounds of combat as two opposing forces engaged in combat. Hidan, Zetsu, and Madara Uchiha are on one side, while the self-proclaimed god and his angel, Pain and Konan, are on the other. While Konan was occupied with Hidan, Pain's bodies helped to level the playing field against Madara and Zetsu's swift and unpredictable attacks. Monodically, Pain asked, You dare defy a god? Don't tell me you bought into your own propaganda? Madara sneered as he hurled a fireball at the Akatsuki leader. Pain scowled and sidestepped the blow with ease before sprinting to his right and narrowly avoiding Zetsu's swipe. Though he wasn't making much progress, he saw that Konan could chop up the immortal Hidan. Although she had many paper techniques, none of them could defeat the immortal human. Zetsu always seemed to get in the way, so it would be ideal if they could switch opponents. We have a plan for this world. Why do you oppose universal peace? He said. Zetsu said in two voices, laughing, Peace? The Biju will give you no peace. That statue will do nothing but explode, shithead. What? Exclaimed Pain, clearly infuriated as he kept dodging and retaliating against Madara and Zetsu. As he hurled a boulder at his opponent, Madara declared, The Biju are demons of pure energy. They listen to very few people and there is no way they would obey a human who claims to be a god. Pain blasted the boulder back at Madara, his eyes narrowing and his brow furrowed. If the statue and Biju are worthless to us, then why are you fighting us? What about the peace you promised? What is your aim, Madara? He responded. While Konan landed next to Pain, Madara just laughed and Hidan joined him. He laughed ominously. My aim does not matter. You will find out soon enough just how peaceful this world can be, after all, he said, laughing as the other two individuals with him vanished into the rift in space that Madara created. A world without humans is a world without war. It could be a trick, but if it is true, Konan frowned, leaving the threat unanswered. Pain gave a nod, and his bodies began to mend and make their way to their rooms. We must inform the greater powers. Having no humans defeats the purpose of Akatsuki, and we may just have to use its allies to stop this coming genocide. We should contact our old teacher. He has an impressive spy network that rivals Sasori's and Zetsu's. Let us get to work. he concluded. Conan just gave a nod and left. They needed to warn the world. Gate of Konoha. 10 a.m. Hana and Naruto waited for their siblings to arrive. The air was suddenly filled with a high-pitched whining sound. Hana peered around inquisitively as Naruto grinned. Naruto saw his brother flying in from the north and said, "Hana-chan, look up." When Hana first saw Sora's dragon form, her head shot up. After a moment of silence, she exclaimed, "Beautiful." Naruto laughed and nodded his head as they touched down in front of the two. "Yo kitties!" Anko exclaimed as she slipped off the dragon Sora. Beaming as Sora transformed back into a human, she hurried over and gave them both a hug. She squealed as she glanced at Hana's hand, then glomped the poor girl and exclaimed, "Welcome to the family, sis," which caused the two dragon brothers to laugh. After embracing and clasping hands, Naruto and Sora parted ways, and Naruto cleared his throat. Sora smirked and said, "As much as I would like to welcome my new sister to the family, we have to report in now, honey." Anko turned around and appeared sheepish before they all shunned to the Hokage's office. Anko gave a cute pout and received a quick kiss from Sora. Office of the Hokage. 4:15 a.m. Tsunade was engaged in combat with the most malevolent foe a Kage must encounter. Paperwork. Tsunade drank another cup of sake and cursed, "I will always damn Sensei to hell for not leaving the secret to defeating this enemy." She silently waved off the Anbu in the room as she sensed 4 familiar chakra signatures approaching with a collective, "Yo!" The 4 dragon siblings arrived, earning the Kage's forehead a tick mark and snickers from the hidden Anbu. With a sigh, Tsunade forced a serious expression. "Report," was her command. Sora moved to the front. He summarized their mission parameters by saying, "Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sands have been eliminated. Zetsu has escaped our grasp at the moment." Noting the pride in Sora's eyes, Tsunade nodded and said, "Good. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki have been removed as well, thanks to Jiraiya, Naruto, and Hana here." She was proud of her godson and his fiancée, too, and she grinned. They were undoubtedly strong. Anko gave Hana another hug. She exclaimed, "Good job. I knew you would be a good addition to the family." Everyone seemed a little perplexed as to why Anko was so engrossed in the family business, so Sora sighed. "Hubbyheim, I know having a family is nice and all, but you need to control yourself more," he replied. Anko appeared somewhat sheepish. "Hokage-sama, the leaders of Akatsuki are in Rain Country, but we have to track down Kakuzu, Hidan and Madara. I know Akatsuki is a major threat, but Shinigami has demanded that we deliver their souls soon because of certain divine rules that must be followed. She has already taken Orochimaru's soul since Anko-chan has finished with him." Sora stated that they were hoping to locate the individuals they required. A voice entered through the window before Tsunade could reply. Jiraiya entered and said, "I can help with that." Naruto's eyebrow went up. He asked, "Why would you help us?" Jiraiya let out a sigh. "I may not be able to reconcile with you, brat, but I still run Konoha's spy network. Recently, Kakuzu has been spotted in Tanzaku-gai. Apparently there is a bounty for the stone giant of Iwa, and he has been spotted in the area," he replied. Sora murmured, "We just returned. How long will he be in the area?" Jiraiya sighed. "Anywhere between a day and a week, but the chances get smaller and smaller every day." After Sora nodded, he turned to face Anko, who appeared extremely exhausted. "Anko-chan?" she asked, becoming alert. "Would you stay here and train Hana for a few days while Naruto and I take care of this?" Hana scowled. "Why don't Naruto and I take care of it and let you two relax?" she offered. Sighed, "Normally I would, however, I want to rest a night before we set out. If I transform into my dragon state, we will be there in half a day, cutting the travel time from 4 days to 1.5. Since I'm resting tonight, I have no experience with you and Anko needs to rest, therefore, my best teamwork option is Naruto," he said. Hana looked down, a little disappointed that she was still unable to assist. Naruto just gave her a gentle hug and said, "Don't worry, Tenshi-chan, you will get your chance soon enough." Hana grinned, and they shared a chaste kiss before turning to leave. Hana gave Naruto a nod. That gave Tsunade the all clear. She received nods before dismissing them all and returning to her paperwork. Enemy. "Very well then, tomorrow at 8 a.m. Sora and Naruto will depart to confront Kakuzu. This will be a S-rank mission and I don't want anyone getting word of this, understood?" she asked. Then, in a flash of gold, a piece of paper materialized. Tsunade read it after giving it a questioning glance. "Greetings. Ba-chan, one amazing thing is Kage Bunshin. Why not assign the paperwork to them?" With a signature, Namikaze Naruto. Tsunade struggled to decide whether to curse Naruto for not telling her sooner or to slam her head against the wall for being so foolish. After making 3 clones in a flash, she leaned back and saw a tiny PS at the conclusion. "PS, having a godson who initially revealed the secret to Gigi is advantageous, isn't it?" She drank a cup of sake and laughed. She said to no one, "Yes, yes it does, brat." That evening, unknown place, a pair of entities appeared on the screen before Beelzebub's throne. The great demon ordered, "Report." A masked man on the right bowed to the demon lord after saying, "The seals have been prepared, my lord, all we wait for is your command." Beelzebub gave a nod of approval. "Good, I will send some of my minions and they will place the seals whilst the rest of the army moves as ordered. You will take out the dragon's mates without their lovers to bolster their strength. The dragons will fall," he said with a wicked grin on his face. "As you wish, all hail Akuma," the two beings replied, bowing, before fading out once more. Beelzebub drank a glass of what looked like red wine and laughed. He shouted at the end, "Your little snake and dog will be dead soon enough, dragon sages, then nothing will stand in my way," before he threw back his head and laughed icily. Gates of Konoha. 7:55 a.m. Sora and Hana were saying goodbye to their lovers in a memorable way by giving them a passionate kiss and promising several erotic experiences upon their return if they did so promptly. It goes without saying that Sora and Naruto were in the air and racing with great haste in the direction of Tanzaku-gai. As their lovers vanished into the distance, Anko turned to face Hana. She smirked and said, "So, girls' day out?" Hana laughed and waved her husband's checkbook, saying, "You know it, girl." Together, the two girls exclaimed, "Shopping," and then vanished for a day of shopping, massages, hot springs, and a spa visit before their lovers came back. A group of trees trembled about 2.5 days away from Konoha as several slender figures ran through them, one of them wearing a mask. "The dragons and the leaf will fall soon. When everyone is dead, there will be peace." As they quickened their pace, the figure chuckled malevolently. 4 p.m. in Tanzaku-gai. After landing, Naruto and Sora immediately separated to locate their target and secure a room for the night before heading to a nearby bar to get the information he required. Naruto went to a hotel called the Mansion and checked into a room with 2 beds. He then proceeded to the room and swiftly installed a few privacy seals, letting only Sora and himself in. In contrast, Sora headed straight to the red light district and sought out the nearby bounty office. After a good 30 minutes, he finally located the place and headed there in the hopes of catching Kakuzu. Before he left town, he went inside and took a look around. A counter was built into the far wall of the rather uninteresting office, which was just an open space with chairs. "Welcome, are you here for a bingo book or to turn in a bounty?" the bounty collector asked with a smile. "I'm here for information. Could I persuade you to help me out?" Sora said, shaking his head and observing that no one else was present. The bounty collector's expression soon turned serious and solemn. He said softly, "Depends. Is your persuasion enough for me to risk my head?" On the desk, Sora unfolded a scroll that she had taken out when he used chakra. A sizable sum of 100 million ryu appeared before the avaricious man, who now had stars in his eyes. He said gravely, "All of that for every bit of info you have on one Kakuzu?" Nodding, the bounty collector said, "He just finished collecting the bounty for the stone giant of you, and not but 2 hours ago. He said he was staying the night but would be leaving early tomorrow since he needed a bingo book from me," he clarified. "Thank you." Sora nodded, and then a kunai hit the counter in front of the man's hand. Sora said gravely, "You won't have to worry about your hand if Kakuzu finds out." With a gulp, the bounty collector nodded. After taking a break, Sora went in search of Naruto in order to ambush Kakuzu tonight. They had to locate him. Naruto was struggling in his bar across town. Overall, the food was bad, the sake was hot, and the waitresses kept pursuing him. This bar was awful. With a sigh, Naruto paid for his meal and went outside to take in the festival that was about to begin tonight. As he strolled around, he saw the younger kids having fun and some of the elderly people cradling their loved ones. With a sigh, he considered Hana. After their first romantic encounter, they had not been apart for more than a night, and he was now deeply missing her. He chose to wait where he was in order to exchange what knowledge he had. After noticing his sensei's chakra signature approaching less than 5 minutes later, Sora showed up and gestured for Naruto to follow him into an alleyway. Once they were certain that no one was observing them, Naruto said, "Sora ni, what's up?" Sora explained quickly while maintaining a high level of alertness. "Kakuzu is leaving tomorrow, so we have to find him tonight so we can track and kill him tomorrow. We don't want to make a scene here in town if we can help it." Nodding, Naruto said, "Not to mention the property damage that could happen. We should split up and use clones and henges to find him." They swiftly created a couple pairs of clones after Sora nodded, and then they all hanged and went in search of their target. Konoha. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Anko was astonished when Hana told him about Naruto and her little experiment, and congratulated her on finding a man who was so confident in his sexuality that he could pull that off regardless. We find the two girls chatting like while seated in the typical dango bar with the Kurenai, Yugao, Hinata, Tenten, and Kinwell, ladies. Sora tells me, Consider what your chakra could accomplish in a more private setting. He's such a horndog, I swear, Anko said. Anko blushed instantly, and everyone laughed heartily at her expense. Hana laughed, this coming from the woman who won't let him out of bed in the morning unless he licks you awake. Hana turned to Kin, saying, Sue, how's Shino? She posed a suggestive question. Shino-kun is fine, said Kin. Flushed, you have my gratitude for your assistance the other night. The girls exchanged knowing and, in the case of Anko and Hana, perverse glances before glomping the poor girl and attempting to extract more information from her. She refused, claiming they had only kissed, but the girls didn't believe her. Since then, we have been fairly close, she said, hardly making eye contact. Being the more sensible one there, Kurenai made the decision to stop bugging the girl. Girls, hurry up. The girls all nodded and said goodbye as everyone went their separate ways. Leave her alone. They're too young to do that sort of thing, she said. Besides, it's getting late and my team has a mission tomorrow. As they passed the Inuzuka compound on their way back to the Namikaze estates, Anko and Hana asked, So, Hana-chan, how does it feel to be engaged to Naruto? Anko inquired. With a soft smile, Hana said, Good Ko-chan, I'm hoping everything goes smoothly. She paused and turned to face the Inuzuka compound after saying, I don't want anything to happen with Akatsuki or the demons, and I am aware of the deals he and Sora made. Yeah, I agree with you there, Anko said, turning to face Hana. Is there a problem? When Hana stopped moving, she asked. Before continuing to walk, Hana scowled and gave it one last glance. No, everything is fine, she said. However, she said, placing a hand to her chin and pausing to reflect, I have had the funniest craving for chocolate and peanut butter ice cream. Anko chuckled and said, Come on, I'll buy you as much chocolate and peanut butter ice cream as you want. As they headed to a nearby Shinobi grocery store, she said jokingly, and Hana left without turning around, which would have allowed her to see the dark figure entering the compound. At 5 p.m. on the same day, with Sora and Naruto, the two dragon brothers had made sure they were far from civilization and that no travelers were nearby before they set up a trap for Kakuzu. They were about an hour of a full shinobi sprint from Tanzaku when they sprang the trap. Sora and Naruto had spent the entire day tracking and following the Akatsuki member, who kind of stood out in a crowd. He had left the city shortly after lunch, contrary to their intelligence, and proceeded deep into the forest. Kakuzu was strolling down the street, ecstatic about his most recent kill, which had brought him a good $1 million and would allow him to relax for a week or so before his own greed caught up with him and forced him to look for more money. However, his senses weren't at full alert, or else he would have noticed the obvious ambush point approaching the wide plain covered in tall grass just before a slight bend in the road. As it was, he barely activated his own Doden. Domu, Earth Release, Earth Spear AN. You'd think this would have a more defensive name, huh? Before three blades slammed into his body, the two silver blades had enough force behind them to liquefy his innards, if he had any, while the ordinary katana with a slight golden hue was able to scratch him, which was impressive considering he had never had his armor even scratched before. After cursing their incapacity to hurt this man, Sora and Naruto swiftly positioned themselves to attack from Kakuzu's front left and front right sides and watched him closely. Thus, I am being pursued by the renowned Naruto Namikaze, Jinchuriki of the Kaobi no Kitsune, and his self-declared brother, Sora Ryu, also known as Ryujin. Kakuzu said sarcastically. Naruto and Sora exchanged glances before nodding. That's right, Sora said. When people try to avoid Shini-chan, she gets upset. Unfortunately, we were directed to. As he lowered himself into his stance, Sora said, help you along. Behind his mask, Kakuzu scowled and said, I am the immortal bounty hunter. With a hint of conceit, he remarked, I will like gathering the bounties on your heads. We don't have time to waste on this pointless drivel, and we know all about your hearts, Naruto said, dropping into his own sword stance and glaring at the Akatsuki agent. If we don't return soon, Anko Ne-san and Hana-chan will kick our asses, Aniki. Naruto said, let's do this. Agreed Otuto, Sora said, nodding. Stop talking, he said as he charged forward with Naruto right beside him. They quickly charge at Kakuzu, who activates his black tendrils and sends them to halt the two dragon warriors. Kakuzu believed that his jutsu would protect the tendrils while striking the two dragons hard. Unfortunately, Naruto was too fast and simply dodged all his attacks while getting closer, and Sora, being a master of his style and his chakra nature, simply danced through his tendrils by cutting through them with lightning chakra. Using his insane speed to its fullest, Naruto jumped back and vanished from view. Naruto arrived first, then proceeded to hammer his armor with swift and fierce strikes, forcing him to dodge and bring his tendrils closer. Sora smirked, quickly closed the gap, and took Naruto's place. He nodded to Naruto before using both of his blades to keep Kakuzu on the defensive. Unbeknownst to Kakuzu, Naruto reappeared behind him and swiftly ran through a few hand seals before focusing chakra to his hand. Gotta remember to thank Kakashi-sensei for this technique, Naruto thought, knowing that Byakurai could likely do the trick of getting past Kakuzu's defenses, but that the technique naturally fluctuates, so the likelihood of hitting the heart at a distance is very low. Naruto smirked and hurried forward just as Kakuzu turned around, saying, "Reikari!" Naruto roared as he stabbed Kakuzu in the heart with his lightning blade. As the two dragon warriors leapt back, Kakuzu yelled strainedly, "You bastards!" Naruto pulled out his sword. "My earthly heart was ruined by you." He let 3 of his masks come out from behind him and screamed, "It looks like I will have to take your heart to compensate." "I'll take the lightning and water boys, Anaki," Naruto said with a laugh. "All of fire and wind are yours," he smirked. "Oi!" Sora frowned. "I wanted water and lightning," he said. "Unfortunately, you lose an Iki when you sleep." Naruto smirked at Kakuzu and yelled, "I have a bad feeling that something is going to happen when I get home, so I think I should finish this quickly." Sora muttered something about the enemy stealing broths before he led his 2 masks away. Behind his mask, Kakuzu frowned and said, "I'll love stealing your heart, boy." His tendrils sprang forward as he spoke. "Senko, Sanzai Kara Bakashi." As his katana turned a deep golden, Naruto said softly, "Blur from existence, flash." He swiftly cut the tendrils that were headed his way into multiple pieces and looked at Kakuzu. "You're going to need to do better than that," Naruto said gravely. Kakuzu shouted, "Sweden! Mizu Teppo," while nodding to his mask. "Water release. Water gun," while his mask roared out a Raiden, Gion. "Lightning release. False darkness." The 2 attacks quickly combined into a roaring bullet of lightning and water. While streaking at the ex-Jinchuriki, Naruto smirked and ran through some hand seals of his own before yelling out, "Raiden! Suin Raryuden no Jutsu." 2 lightning dragons swirled around him before launching into Kakuzu's attack and launching it back at the startled bounty hunter. Lightning release. Twin lightning dragons. Kakuzu snarled and swiftly moved Kawarimi out of the way as the empowered attacks produced a huge crater. Naruto was not deceived, and he maintained his vigilance despite the presence of the crater. Kakuzu was concealed in the tall grass behind Naruto, and he approached silently before emerging and launching his combined attack once more. He grinned when he saw the attack strike the startled-looking ninja square in the face. "Cocky brat," laughed Kakuzu. "He ought to be more aware of his surroundings," he said. As he drove his sword through Kakuzu's heart, Naruto's voice said, "Back at you, old man. Shadow clones are amazing things, aren't they?" Naruto grinned as he spoke. With a growl, Kakuzu said, "I will kill you, brat, but congrats." In an attempt to catch Naruto off guard, he remarked, "No one has ever destroyed 2 of my hearts in a single battle since Tobirama." As he assumed his swordmaster stance, Naruto grinned and said, "I know all about your lifespan, Kakuzu, but I'm afraid that it ends today." Kakuzu was a little taken aback, but he didn't want to give Naruto the opportunity to attack, so he immediately sent all of his available tendrils to attack Naruto and stop whatever attack he was preparing. It was too late. Ryu no Senko. As he spun and landed with his arms and legs crossed, Naruto uttered the words, "Dragon Flash," before vanishing into 25 distinct images. As abruptly as he vanished, Naruto reappeared with his sword in a post-slash position before Kakuzu fell to the ground with multiple shallow but ultimately fatal wounds. Naruto sheathed his blade and said, "Good night, immortal bounty hunter." He watched the light go out of Kakuzu's eyes and turned to watch his brother enter the now demolished field. "You should have trained in your defense more, Kakuzu. You were too vulnerable after your earth heart was down." With Sora. Following their breakup, fortunately, the 2 masks were incapable of speaking. Unfortunately, their combinations were extremely difficult to avoid and caused a great deal of damage. They were primarily instinctive and lacked higher cognitive thinking. Sora avoided another explosive fire-wind combination before landing and glaring at the 2 masks. He swiftly blasted them back with a Byakurai, but they ducked and retaliated with their tendrils. Sora sighed as his weapons effortlessly sliced through the tendrils, transforming them into multiple tiny black pieces that vanished as they hit the ground. They launched their tendrils at him once more as Sora leapt back, saying, "Enough." Bankai, Sora o Shihai Suru, Ryujin. Final release, rule the skies above, Dragon God. This is the end, he roared, his silver lightning chakra flaring wildly, easily destroying the tendrils as he glared at the 2 masks who stepped back. "My wife is waiting for me at home and you are wasting my time," he said calmly, his chakra swirling menacingly around him. "Goodbye." he said calmly. The two masks charged their attacks once again as Sora leveled his two blades parallel to the floor. The masks unleashed their attacks just as Sora called out. Suan Soryuha. Twin Dragon Strike. Sora just Kawaramied out of their attack as his two dragons floated around their strike and destroyed the masks. Looking at the wreckage, Sora sighed and turned to the sounds of battle he had just left behind. Let's see if Naruto is done yet, he said, addressing the hearts Kakuzu had stolen. Rest in peace, knowing your defiler is dead. As he leapt into the trees, he declared, if I'm not home by tonight, my wife will kill me. 5 minutes later, while Naruto was destroying Kakuzu, Sora landed. He nodded to Naruto, who nodded back, and then he ran through some hand seals and called forth the Shinigami. He sighed as he saw the hideous figure the god used to deal with mortals, and he said, Shini-chan here as Kakuzu as agreed. Well done, you too. As she reaped the bounty hunter's soul, she remarked, now, all that's left is Hidan and that infernal Madara Uchiha. I'll see you both soon, Naruto, and oh boy, congrats on your engagement. Ask that fiancé of his if she wants to spice up her love life. Yami says as she sends her best wishes. The Shinigami nodded to Sora and then vanished back to her work, chuckling at Naruto's pale expression. Naruto turned to Sora and said, you agree that we never bring this up to Hana-chan? Desperately, he asked. Tell her, Sora said with a laugh, perhaps you'll be lucky. As Naruto leapt on his back and they vanished in a loud boom, he said in jest before changing into his dragon form, now come on, I have a bad feeling that something is going to happen in Konoha while we are away. Inuzuka Estates at 4 a.m. A black figure stood watching the Inuzuka Estates, grinning and shouting, start the assault. Point to the other hidden figures. Don't let any dogs live. It's a shame no one ever warned them that announcing their attack with howls on a ninja compound in a ninja village was a bad idea, he said, growing louder as he spoke. He grinned as he watched the numerous loud howls and noises made by the various demons and devils as they descended on the unwary Inuzukas. Shiroi and the Haimaru triplets rushed out of their kennels in their armors and howled their defiance as they charged the demonic forces. The Inuzuka clan's ninjas were already awake at the first howl of the demons. The Ninken, in their various kennels, were roused and ready for battle, while the civilians were still waking and being ushered into safer zones because the demons believed they would have free reign against the humans. Two Kunoichi glanced at each other at the Namikaze estates nearby, then vanished in a flash of speed. The four animals tore through the dredged like tissue paper, and Sume grinned as she turned to the different ninja who had arrived and said, evacuate the civilians. Kiba and Sume hurried outside as soon as they heard that howl. Sume turned to Kiba and said, join them, pup. She gestured to the four animals, who all nodded and hurried off to protect the civilians. This is not our battle, she declared. But, we call this place home. How can we not win this battle? Kiba questioned loudly. Pup. We are not on the same level as demons. It's hard for me to kill many of these. What is a typical ninja capable of? She asked seriously. Kiba looked down in shame before he heard a yelp. Sume looked at the battle to see Haimaru's leg get slashed. Haimaru. Come on, boy. Kiba gave the battle one final glance before joining in the evacuation, and she yelled as she knelt down and prepared a jutsu to heal the injured Ninken. Since there were so many different kinds of devils, fire, ice, horned, poison, and so on, as well as the regular demons and the four dragon companions, the injured Ninken leapt back and Shiroi swiftly covered his retreat, using her immense agility and speed to keep the numbers at bay. Nevertheless, it was getting to be too much for the fox, and she was starting to tire. Unfortunately, Ahezru never had the opportunity to blast through the remaining Ninkens after landing behind the lines. Tsuin Ryudenka. As Haimaru rejoined the dragon companions, Anko and Hana landed beside them. Twin Dragon Charge. Roared as a combined chakra of wind and poison spread the poison farther than usual and tore through the demonic sergeant. Big mistake. Raiden. Reiryuden no Jutsu. The demons paused to gather themselves before staring at their new foes. Everyone turned to see a smirking Sasuke Uchiha. You know, I don't think Naruto would appreciate you jerks trying to kill his in-laws. Lightning Release. Lightning Dragon Technique. A rather large dragon ripped through the demons closest to the clan head's house and vanished before it reached the defending dragon warriors. When he shunshined beside Hana, the demons snarled and began to move toward him. Would you mind if I offered you a hand for being such a jerk to Naruto? Before Hana could respond, Shiroi approached the Uchiha at a trot, gave him a quick glance, then jumped on his head and yelled in agreement. It doesn't seem like I have a choice. Hana laughed. Shiroi-chan has already acknowledged. Sasuke nodded, and they turned back to the enraged demons. Just support us, you're going to be weaker against these guys, she said gravely. To paraphrase my husband, you're going to be dining in hell tonight, boys. Anko laughed. She shouted, then charged into the demons once more, sending blood and limbs flying. It takes one to know one. Hana shook her head and said, "Crazy bitch." Her eyes glowed wildly and she grinned, "Yes, guys." Before joining her sister in arms, she yelled, and Sasuke shook his head before launching lightning bolts to support the two courageous kunoichi. Madara frowned as he watched the demons being destroyed from the top of a nearby building. "What weaklings," he remarked. "I don't understand how they claim to serve my master," before noticing Zetsu standing beside him. "Is everything in order?" Zetsu grinned gleefully at the thought of getting to eat human flesh before he melted into the ground. "Good. Then we will take out the opposition," he asked, receiving a nod. The last of the devils had just been dispatched by Hana and Anko when Shiroi yipped something that sounded stranglingly similar to, "Get out the way." Fortunately for the two dragon warriors, they heeded the wise counsel and leapt away. Just as a fireball had just landed where they all turned to face the man who had launched it and saw a man wearing an Akatsuki cloak and a spiral mask. Unfortunately, stopping cost them two tendrils of wood exploded out of the ground, aiming for the girls' hearts, but fortunately, their reflexes were better than Zetsu had anticipated, and he was only able to hit their shoulders. Hana let out a muffled cry as the tendril tore itself from her shoulder, and Anko swore loudly. "I hope you have more than that in you," Madara said. "I'm going to enjoy making you bitches scream in pain." He went on, grinning, as he emerged from the ground to stand beside Madara. Madara's eyes widened and he vanished as a high-pitched whining sound suddenly filled the air, followed shortly after by the sound of a distant fire. Unfortunately for Zetsu, a silver-colored fireball struck him, roasting him alive, and Sora landed next to Anko, breathing heavily, while Naruto hurried over to Hana, who was tending to her own wound. Sora quickly applied his own methods after changing back. "Habiheim, are you okay?" Anko sneered and kissed him before she began whispering in his ear as he asked, a little breathless. He turned to Madara, who was glaring at Sora and growling. His chakra easily visible as lightning cackled around him. Naruto had arrived at Hana and swiftly inspected her before she reassured him that she would be alright. "You're dead, Madara." "Hajutsu Ryu Senin. Ryu no Tamashi Kai." Naruto roared as he pulled out his katana, which immediately switched to its Bankai mode and his body entered Dragon Sage mode. Dragon Sage Secret Technique. Dragon Soul Release. Every time Madara phased, Naruto was on top of him before he was completely back into reality. Naruto quickly grew tired of this and decided to end this charade. Madara's eyes widened as Naruto disappeared from view, and he quickly used his own Kamui to dodge the attack and start trying to strike with his own attacks. "This is the end for you," he said quietly before turning to face Madara. "Dragon's absolute reality." Calmly, he said, "You attacked my friend and her family." Madara let out a wild laugh and said, "You are 100 years too young to touch me, boy. Try your hardest for me," he said arrogantly. Naruto replied, "As you wish, Ryujin no Senko." After transforming into more than 100 after images, Naruto reappeared in a flash, slicing Madara to pieces and finishing with his katana in an after-slash position. He then got up and went to sheath his sword. Madara chuckled. "Is that really it? You couldn't touch me, I told you." He uttered those words. With a sigh, Naruto said, "And I told you, this is the end." He sheathed his blade, and Madara fell into more than 20 pieces. Everyone was stunned until Naruto said, "His ability still hindered most of my strikes. The ones that got through were lethal." Naruto hurried to his fiancée as his brother called forth the Shinigami to destroy Madara's soul. "I'm tired," Naruto said. "What do you think about spending a day snuggling in bed after taking a dip in the hot springs?" did he ask. "Sounds like a plan to me." "Taiyo-kun," Hana grinned and answered. "Count me and Sora-kun in too," Anko said. Wrapping her arms around their shoulders, Sora joined them shortly after, and the three of them laughed before leaving for home. That night at Beelzebub's castle, on his scrying table, a figure appeared. "Sire," he spoke loudly. "They failed and died." Beelzebub sighed. He asked, irritated. "But they got the seals in place, my lord," the figure said, nodding. "At least they weren't completely worthless." Beelzebub grinned. "Get ready to call me and my army to your kingdom. I think it's time to prove to these people who are in charge," he said, giggling uncontrollably. With an angry nod, the figure said, "It will be done. Salutations to Jashin-sama." He uttered those words loudly before vanishing. Even the most evil devil was chilled to the bone by Beelzebub's dark chuckle. Yes, that one is a good and loyal servant. 3 months had passed since Zetsu and Madara had passed away. About a month ago, Naruto and Hana were married in a small, private ceremony that was attended by several gods, disguised of course, as well as Minato and Kushina, who were ecstatic to see their son wed the Inuzuka woman. Both of them were aware of his deep love for her, and since Kushina had forced him to pop the question, there were no misgivings on their part. Sume, on the other hand, was much more outspoken about Naruto spoiling her some grandpups, which quickly led to Hana's now familiar comment of, "Mom," followed by laughter, unaware that she no longer needed to plead with them. Sume spent the next week contentedly holed up in their room with Hana and Naruto, fulfilling her request. Hana could compete with Naruto for a good hour because she had significantly improved over the previous 3 months. That was a good achievement, especially since Naruto was able to go toe-to-toe with Sora for nearly 3 hours. But at the moment, she was in a hospital room, and Tsunade was beaming at her with a smile. She said, "Congratulations, you're about 3.5 months along." Hana rubbed her stomach and grinned broadly. Softly, she said, "My baby." When Tsunade saw how happy Hana was, she grinned. She inquired, "When are you going to tell Naruto?" Hana's glow slightly faded as she glanced up at Tsunade. I'll tell him soon, but I don't want to make him worry about me until we can finish off Hidan," she replied. Tsunade scowled and said, respecting the woman's decision, he would want to know right away. "Still, I won't say anything for now." "Thank you, I promise to tell him within the month for sure. Is that okay?" Hana said, nodding at Tsunade. Shizune rushed into the room after Tsunade nodded. She half shouted, "Tsunade-sama," and gasped while clutching a piece of paper. Tsunade asked her student, half angry, "What is so important that you had to interrupt a private doctor's visit, Shizune?" Tsunade widened her eyes as Shizune merely held out the piece of paper before she grabbed Hana and shunned Shin to her office. She exclaimed, "Get me Sora Ryu, Anko Ryu, and Naruto Namikaze in my office now." Office of the Hokage. 5 minutes later, Shizune, Jiraiya, and Sarutobi joined the other 3 individuals who had gathered. The man was disliked by Naruto, but as a strong shinobi, he had gained Naruto's respect. As Tsunade inhaled deeply and scowled at the 2 dragon men, he turned to face her. "Would you 2 explain just why I have a scroll here with detailed invasion plans of a demon army into Hai no Kuni? No, wait, perhaps a better question would be, why would Kaobi send it to me with a summoning seal saying he needed to talk to you?" She began to scream. "Huh?" Sora and Naruto exchanged glances before turning back to Tsunade and saying a single word that perfectly captured the situation. This caused almost everyone, including their wives, to take the blame. Their wives swiftly recovered and gave them a slap on the head for their rudeness and lack of consideration before speaking. With a sigh, Tsunade interrupted the girls' tirades and said, "As much as I love to see them squirming, I need an answer." The 2 women gave her a sheepish look. Sora exhaled. "Well, I did free him from Naruto, and he did threaten to kill me when I looked like a threat to the hatchling. Maybe he's taken a shine to Naruto?" he replied with interest. Naruto raised his eyebrows. He didn't genuinely care about him, even though the kitsune had taught him taijutsu, did he? He said, "Aniki, you sure about that?" Nodded. "Inari-sama said that Kaobi often asked about your progress when we were away. I wouldn't put it past him to simply be checking on a possible enemy, since kitsunes are rather crafty, as you all know. But they also view anything associated with them as their own responsibility. He may just be repaying a debt, or he could believe that Naruto is part of his responsibility. Really, we will have to summon him and find out," he responded. "Summon the beast that destroyed half of Konoha? Are you insane?" Jiraiya enunciated. "This time I am here and he can be desummoned at any moment because it would be a breach in our contract," Sora said, eyeing Jiraiya. "Kaobi is not pure evil. As a matter of fact, he is one of the few demon lords who doesn't let his demons run amok in the worlds. He was tricked by Madara last time." Sora's eyes grew deadly cold and serious. Jiraiya remained unconvinced. "Even if you're powerful enough to fight him, the fight would still do tremendous damage. Besides that, how can we be sure he's not lying?" As he considered it, Sora had grown weary of Jiraiya's whining. "Look, Jiraiya, either we ignore it and we find ourselves completely fine, or we ignore it and find ourselves under siege by an army of demons. Now, he motioned to the 4 dragon warriors, could fight them off, but the damage would be enormous. If that happens, I would hold you personally responsible for the hundreds, probably thousands, of innocent deaths because you are scared. So it's either ignore him and get almost destroyed in the process, or summon him, see what he wants, and, if he's lying, kick his ass back to Makai. If he's not lying, however, we have valuable intel on demons that could be striking this country. Your choice, Gama Senin," Sora said with an angry voice. Before Suande spoke, there was silence. She glared at Jiraiya to silence him and turned to face Naruto and Sora. "Enough bickering. We will summon Kaobi to see what he wants. You 2 will be there and in your sage forms until we determine he's either not a threat, or gone." "Understood," she said. Her response was met with 2 nods and worried glances from the others. Everyone nodded, and the group vanished in a huge shunshin. "Good. Let's go to the forest behind the Hokage mountain. It's secluded and has plenty of space for a fight. The forest of Hokage mountain. 3 minutes later. Tsunade gave Naruto the scroll, which triggered his sage mode, and sent her Anbu to warn the village not to intervene if they felt anything. Everyone fell into a fighting stance, with the exception of Naruto, who slapped blood onto the seal and tossed it farther into the clearing as Sora quickly followed before the scroll grew to a roughly human-sized outline. It was consumed in a blue fire. A humanoid figure with his arms crossed and a faint smile on his face as he gazed at Naruto was revealed when the flame vanished. He had red eyes with a slit in the pupil and flaming red hair. Without a helmet, he wore a magnificent full-plate armor with a fox motif and flames licking various spots, a black wood bow and a matching obsidian broadsword, which seemed to absorb all light but still emit an almost flame-like radiance, were strapped to his back. Everyone's attention was drawn to the fact that he had 9 flowing red tails with black tips and twin blood-red fox ears on his head. He was the Kitsune's king, Kaobi no Yoko. His tone was light as he said, well, Naruto, it has certainly been a while. How has the taijutsu style been treating you? Naruto laughed, then his expression changed to one of seriousness. Quite well, thanks for asking, Kaobi. Cut the crap please, we need to know why you sent that letter, he replied. Everyone tensed at this, and Jiraiya was about to move when Naruto gave him a glare. Kaobi laughed and nodded, saying, very well, I have been keeping an eye on you, kid. I do not like this village. As a matter of fact, I wish it to burn to the ground right now. However, it is your home and I will not destroy it out of that fact, he said. Before Naruto asked another question, everyone calmed down. He questioned, why have you been watching me? Kaobi broke down in laughter. Naruto, every Jinchuriki represents their demon, whether they want to or not. You have manifested a dragon soul. Something only Ryujin, a god who was once human, achieved. That alone makes you worthy to be my representative in this world. Yet, you also have destroyed an army of demons with only your mate at your side, albeit a small one. You killed a man who could take on a high-level demon and win, and, on top of all this, you also have a reputation in Valhalla that is exceeded only by your own parents and a few of the most powerful warriors in existence. You are interesting indeed. Naruto Nomics. Ryu Senko no Konohagakure, he responded. While the majority of people were silently impressed by Naruto's resume, Hana was thinking something like, hey, my man is awesome. Kaobi laughed as he continued, 3 months ago, Beelzebub sent Madara and Zetsu to destroy your mate's family. Demons consider attacking family as low, and few things are lower than that. Last week, he requested passage through my lands to get to a portal to this plane of existence. I had no choice but to comply because he threatened to destroy my, still recovering, kingdom to shreds. I assure you, he has plenty of demons to do so, and I fear you may not have the strength to defeat them alone, he continued. When Beelzebub was mentioned, Sora's face turned pale and his blood froze. Everyone turned and stared at him, asking, Beelzebub? Beelzebub as in, Jashin, the Lord of Pain, Misery, Blood, and the only demon to have survived my true Dragon Sage mode? Asked Sora. Kaobi just nodded while observing Sora start cursing loudly. Aniki, if this guy survived your true Dragon Sage mode, how the hell are we supposed to beat him? Replied Naruto. With a sigh, Sora turned to face the sky and said, no idea, Otato. Oi. What's this true Dragon Sage mode you talking about? On top of that, the answer is simple. We kick his ass, Anko confidently exclaimed as she stepped up and gave her husband a slap across the back of his head. You are both the strongest warriors against demons. You have never been defeated by one before. Why let that start now? Hana asked, glancing at them and offering her opinion. Before they both burst out laughing, Sora turned to face Naruto, who returned her gaze. Man, Aniki, I can't believe we got so worked up. Naruto uttered those words. When he stopped laughing, Sora shook his head and said, Otato, you said it. Naruto just grinned brightly at Hana for the confidence boost. Alright, first, true Dragon Sage mode is when, Sora said, nodding to both Habiheim and Tenchi-chan. See the flashback in the previous chapter. He looked at Kaobi and said, we need all the information you can give us. He then put himself into general mode, as Anko called it, and added, we will need all the dragons we can get to fight this menace off. A scroll the size of the Forbidden Scroll materialized as Kaobi snapped his finger and grinned malevolently. It's all yours, and I don't take kindly to threats, so kick his ass for me, would you? He asked slyly. All right by me, Sora said with a gloomy laugh. Now that I think about it, I owe the bastard for taking the lives of some of my allies. I want you to copy and memorize this scroll for the Dragon Council. Naruto nodded, and Anko and Hana were prepared to move when Sora spoke again, saying, girls, we move out in 1 week. He winced as they gave him withering glares. I need you to stay here in Konoha, he said. Ryu-kun, what did you say? Darkly, Anko said. Konoha might be attacked from behind the lines, Sora said, looking straight at them without flinching. To keep the populace safe, I need both of you here with the Shadow Core. He saw the expression in Hana's eyes and interrupted her, saying, your healing is very good, but you would only be able to heal me or Naruto at the front lines. Your skills are more suited to single battles than large-scale war. Please don't fight me on this. Dragons have their own healers. He looked down, and his voice was worried. Naruto and I need to concentrate on taking out huge legions of demons. With you on the battlefield, we can't do that. Seeing their reactions to the notion of them being a hindrance, he said, not that you need protection, but we care for you too much to not pay attention. I love you both, Hana-chan and Anko-ne-san, Naruto said abruptly, but it's what Aniki said. We would unconsciously look out for you. Please remain at home and safeguard the location we want to visit again. In addition, the girls grinned subtly as Hana approached Naruto, and he said, if we died, you'd drag us out of heaven, hell, and Valhalla just to kick our asses right back there. Naruto nodded and turned to face Anko and Sora as she kissed him and said, all right, but I have something I need to tell you before you leave. Jiraiya's perverted giggles were followed by the sounds of paper being torn up and balls being crushed as Anko grabbed Sora and gave him a fiery kiss. She looked into his eyes and said, you better come back, otherwise Orochi Teme will have had a cakewalk compared to you. Sora nodded, and Anko grinned and came closer before whispering in his ear, and I expect the last day to mean something. Understood? She spoke in a sensual tone, and Sora gave a fiery smile and nodded before Anko left. Naruto gave Hana a chaste kiss and said, I'll be doing this work. He tapped the scroll that Kaobi had given them and asked if it would be okay if you looked after Shiroi while I was away. She won't be able to keep up. Hana nodded and grinned before Naruto vanished in his shunshin, with Hana at his side to assist him if necessary. Good to see the kid smiling, Sora said, turning to face Kaobi, who was grinning. Even you won't be safe from me, Ryujin, so you'd better keep him that way. I always knew you saw the hatchling as your own, Sora said with a gentle smile. With the jaws of the other humans dangling on the ground, he replied, don't worry, Hana will keep him happy. I know she will, Kaobi said with a laugh. Goodbye Sora, and Kaobi paused, then said, may Inari-sama bless your path. He then vanished in the same way that he had been called. Before he vanished to call his war council, Sora laughed and said, and may Ryujin bless your kid Kaobi. The humans were left to shake their heads at the uncontrollable situation. Timeskip for the week. Namikaze Estates. They were set up at one end of a valley where the demons were supposed to materialize, and tomorrow they would move to the base camp that held the dragon's main forces. It would be another 2 weeks before the attack itself, so they wanted to get the lay of the land and practice a few maneuvers. Hana and Anko had been surprisingly supportive of their husbands and hadn't argued about staying behind. They understood and didn't want to be in the way, and they both knew that Hana was pregnant and that she was starting to show a little. It smells delicious, Tenshi-chan, she said, grinning broadly as she lit the final candle for dinner and felt 2 powerful arms encircle her body before she breathed in the aroma of her partner and baby's father. I apologize for being so busy lately, but since it appears that Hidan is the one who summons, hopefully we can finish him off after this. But we still can't find him. When Hana graciously accepted Naruto's offer of his chair, he said brightly, then, we can finally start that family. After noticing Hana's silence, Naruto quickly sat down and started eating, but Hana spoke before him. Taiyo-kun. You want to start a family, she said anxiously. As he considered something negative, Naruto's face darkened. What's wrong, Hana-chan? Is there a problem? In the hopes that Kami-sama would correct him, he asked. When Hana didn't hear a response, she looked up to see Naruto staring at her in shock. As evidenced by the chopsticks falling out of his hand, her thoughts swiftly went down a dark path until she found herself being bodily lifted and twirling like a ballerina. Hana blushed and turned her head away, but she said loud enough for him to hear, it's already been started. Naruto exclaimed with delight, you're pregnant? Oh my Kami-sama. He yelled as he laughed loudly. Hana quickly joined in as his laughter was infectious, and soon her giggling turned into full-blown squells of joy as he set her down on the couch and proceeded to put his ear to her belly. Can I hear it yet? Did he ask? Laughing, Hana said, not yet, silly. Apparently, I miscalculated my final heat, and we ended up killing Hidan instead of waiting until we did. Well, you know, she said, maintaining her gentle smile. Hee, I'm sorry about that, Naruto said, laughing and scratching his head sheepishly. Is it a girl or a boy, then? Did he ask? With a sigh, Hana sat up and said, I haven't done any of that yet. After the battle, Taiyo-kun. We can do it. Let's enjoy the evening for the time being, shall we? she uttered those words. After giving her a gentle smile and taking her hand, Naruto gave her a chaste kiss and said, "Whatever you want, baby." They went upstairs to cuddle until they fell asleep. At the same time, on the other side of town, after spending a wonderful evening at the Roaring Dragon restaurant, where Anko had some sake and dangos and Sora had some sushi, they hurried back to the apartment and cuddled on Anko's couch. Anko sighed as she traced a line across Sora's stomach and said, "Who would have ever thought that I would find a husband?" Anko smiled softly. As he observed her and played with her hair, Sora remarked, "I'm sure you could have found someone, hubbyhum." "Of course you would," Anko said with a quiet laugh. "Optimist," she said, turning to face him. "Yeah, you should stop being so dark," Sora retorted with a laugh, pessimistic. The two obviously didn't sleep that night, but Anko just smiled softly and said, "Shut up and gimme what I want." She swiftly closed the gap between their mouths and kissed him fiercely. Konoha Gates. The following day, every shinobi in the village had gathered to bid farewell to their two fellow nins. Naruto and Sora soon showed up with their wives and made their way to the gate, where the Shadow Corps and Dragon Elders were waiting for them. Shinobi shouted praise and gratitude for helping them win the invasion as they went, and the four dragons grinned and made their way to the gate. Tsunade stepped forward, grinned, hugged Naruto, and kissed him on the forehead before shaking Sora's hand and turning back to the shinobi. Sora, Ryu and Naruto Namikaze, two Konohagakure shinobi, are departing today to confront a serious threat. They have gathered their own army to fight the demon army that threatens to invade Hai no Kuni. In the event that demons manage to escape, they will be leaving their wives and a dedicated group of dragons to help defend the village. Notify one of these kunoichi or those dragons immediately in the event of a demon attack, she said, gesturing to Hana and Anko, who were at the head of the Shadow Corps. That's off topic. But let's celebrate our allies' victories and send them off with a resounding demonstration of the legendary Will of Fire. At the conclusion, she yelled as all of the shinobi cheered. Then a dragon's roar tore through the cheer, and everyone paused to watch Ryujin, in his dragon form, being ridden by Naruto. "I can assure you, Konoha, that there will be no demons entering our homes." Ryujin roared his agreement as Naruto yelled, and the cheers burst out again, and the dragon elders transformed into dragons and took off. Ryujin appeared to smile as Naruto did, and they took off. Tsunade whistled in appreciation as they quickly vanished from view. "They're definitely unique, aren't they?" She didn't ask anyone in particular. Before returning to the Namikaze estates, Hana and Anko laughed simultaneously and said, "Indeed they're." The shadowy figure examining the trees in front of the gates went unnoticed. 2-week time jump. Dragon's base camp. Both Sora and Naruto had a very stressful 2 weeks while Sora was readjusting to the dragon commanders. Naruto was worried about Hana and wanted to call her, but he had been too busy getting ready to do so. They also used their little free time to try to reach true Dragon Sage mode, but both were unsuccessful. With over 3 million Dresht and Babas, 1 million Gezras, an unknown number of other devils and such, 200,000 Mariliths, one of which alone can tear a dragon of 2,000 years to pieces, 300 Balors, and 4 more pit fiends, on top of Beelzebub himself. The dragons were currently preparing to battle the largest demon army since the Great Demon Wars. When the pit fiends entered the battle, Ryukin, Ryukaze, Naruto, or Sora would have to take care of them. The dragons only had roughly 2 million younger hatchlings that could match up to a Gezru, only about 58,000 dragons that could take on anything higher than that, and then about 800 that could, with teamwork, take out Balors. They all saw a huge red glow, felt the oppressive demonic aura enter this plane, and prepared for battle when they heard a call from the field below. It seems that Hidan had sacrificed his life to call forth the demons, and sadly, Naruto and Sora would have to kill Beelzebub himself in order to retrieve Hidan's soul. When the sounds of whips cracking to get the Drekts moving caused the dragons to tense, the enormous demon armies soon appeared on the far field and marched until there was a wide space between the two armies and the pit fiends strode forward with devilish smirks. Sora and Naruto exchanged a look, knowing that something wasn't quite right, but they went to meet the demons, escorted by Ryukaze and Ryukin. As the dragons advanced, Beelzebub chuckled ominously and remarked, well, we meet again, Ryujin. "You know this is part of the dragon's domain, Beelzebub," Sora said with a low growl. "You're here, but why?" In an attempt to be polite, he asked. "Oh, I thought it'd be nice to let the kids see this world for once," Beelzebub said, merely laughing once more. "I mean, you can't deny me that." "Not a chance in heaven, nor hell," Sora said, glaring at Beelzebub. "This won't become an issue if you leave now," he said. Now, you should know better than to threaten me," Beelzebub said, his smile threatening to split his face. "Furthermore, you never know what trick I might have up my sleeve," he said, Wiping his arm clean and biting his finger before smearing his blood across a seal on his arm, Sora reached for him but was unsuccessful as the pit fiend vanished, along with a quarter of his forces. "Where is he?" he shouted, whipping around to the other pit fiends. Before they could reply, Beelzebub's voice echoed across the field, and when everyone looked up, they saw a screen with the missing demons standing in front of them, grinning wildly, and Konoha's gates being closed. Naruto and Sora's blood ran cold. "Here I am, Ryujin. However, let's wait until the remaining partygoers arrive before speaking." Sora scowled, but Ryukin managed to soothe him enough to wait. "I said," he said, laughing darkly. Returning to Konoha at the same time, Hana had chosen to take the Haimaru triplets and Shiroi, and the two Kunoichi quickly arrived atop the gates just as the Hokage arrived. And the demons smiled seeing the two mates for the dragon sages there. Anko and Hana were preparing for battle after Anko had recently visited Tsunade and confirmed that she was also pregnant. The joy had been absolutely astounding until the demons had appeared and the girls had to quickly prepare for battle. "It's very kind of you to come, Hana-chan and Anko-chan." The two girls shuddered at the tone of his voice as he said, "After all, we can't start the main event without you." He smiled sickly and added, "I am so glad that I had Madara and Zetsu place those seals to allow us to summon ourselves straight here." "With us? What do you want?" Hana inquired as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He replied, "Why should we hold you hostage so we can take over this world?" "Oh wait." He smiled at the girls and said, "I suppose you can work for that too. We also need to pay back Ryujin for all the torment he gave us during the wars," he said gloomily. On the opposite side of the screen from Sora and Naruto. There was no way the thing would touch their wives. They would die a million times over before that. Both men were snarling so loudly and radiating so much chakra that the pit fiends had backed away from them and were even returning to their own army. "Konoha and the girls are back." Anko glared as Hana snarled and raised her head in disgust, saying, "You perverted demon, just because we are women doesn't mean we are weak," Hana shouted. "I love breaking girls like you," Beelzebub said with a hearty laugh. "You'll be pleading for more by the time I'm through with you," he remarked passionately. "As if?" Hana spat in his direction. "In addition, I'm already expecting, not to mention with a tinge of pride," she spoke loudly. "Ya you piece of shit." Anko grinned and supported her sister. "They have us. There is nothing you can do about the babies our lovers bear inside our wombs," she responded with a shout. Alongside Naruto and Sora, both Naruto and Sora were grinning widely, Naruto for his wife's courage and Sora for her pregnancy, when Beelzebub burst out laughing. "This is perfect. I get to break your wives, but I also get to make your children hate and despise you." Before he started laughing again, he said. Ryukin looked at his wife and said, "He really shouldn't have said that, huh?" The expression on their faces was priceless, and only Ryukaze and Ryukin had seen it on Ryujin before. Hatred, pure, unadulterated hatred of one who threatened what they loved most. Ryukaze simply gave a head nod. When Beelzebub heard twin cries of Ryu Senin Hajutsu, Ryu Seiki Kai, his laughter ceased. Dragon Sage Secret Technique, Dragon True Soul Release. He turned his head to see a scene he would never want to see again. Sora's body was completely covered in his silver scales. His wings and tail were normal, but his face was covered and had two horns protruding from the front of his head. Additionally, there was an apple-sized onyx crystal ball in the middle of his chest, black lightning arcing from the Kreitzel to various parts of his extremities, and his normally short hair had grown long enough to create a mane-like structure over the upper back between his wings. When Naruto looked at his brother and said, "This army is yours, brother," he opened his mouth to point out that, fortunately for the pit fiend, they weren't on his side of the portal, but his orb was a bright blue with brilliant arcs of blue lightning with a white outline. "I own Beelzebub." Sora just nodded, pulled out his blades, and strode forward. In Konoha, with a trembling laugh, Beelzebub turned to face Naruto on the screen and said, "It doesn't matter, you worthless ninja, before you ever arrive, I'll get your wife." After shouting, he ran to the wall with the intention of snatching the girl. He had completed a 3-day run in less than a second. Hiraishin is a truly magnificent jutsu, isn't he? Naruto turned slowly to look at the now shocked pit fiend and said, "You attack my home." The shinobi had rapidly prepared for battle before a dragonized Naruto appeared before Hana in a golden flash, leaving everyone speechless. "You put my family in danger. You threatened my mate and child. You are dead." Naruto roared as he charged down the wall and slammed into Beelzebub. Surprisingly, no one was harmed by the lightning that arced around him, but his eyes glowed a brilliant sky blue. Anko glanced over the carnage and turned to her shadow core, saying, "No one interferes." A dust cloud erupted, and Beelzebub abruptly flew out of it towards his army. Naruto swiftly charged in after him, the lightning surrounding his body and blades striking out randomly and frying demons like it was child's play. All we would do is obstruct the path. They all nodded before vanishing into the darkness to observe the conflict. We guard the walls. When Beelzebub sacrificed his own soldiers to the deadly blows of the enraged dragon sage, Naruto spent nearly 30 minutes pursuing him. The list is endless. Left lung, Gezru takes it to the head, stomach, Merilith becomes impaled on Naruto's blade, heart, Drekt was used to shield his body, and so on. However, Naruto soon grew weary of this and sat back before assuming his typical swordmaster stance, with dead and dying demons everywhere and the few remaining alive running away. I have had enough, Naruto declared Hiraishin no Ryu Senko. Beelzebub, demonstrating his skill, was able to block nearly 1,000 strikes. Unfortunately, he only caught a fraction of the non-fatal strikes, and his body quickly fell into many pieces of demon. Dragon flash of the flying thunder god. Naruto screamed as he spun in place before vanishing into thousands of afterimages. With Sora. The battle begins. The pit fiends watched and frowned before ordering a full-fledged charge towards the dragon lines, and Sora smirked as he saw the charge and simply brought his blades up to his chest. Ryukaze and Ryuken both smiled softly before silently flanking behind him as Sora walked forward slowly. Twin Dragon Strike. He roared as black lightning swirled around him in twin dragons. Then it stormed forward, destroying the demonic charge and allowing his own forces to split the demons apart. The younger dragons, who had never witnessed Ryujin fight before, were amazed by his strength. No demon stood before him and survived to tell the story. The elder dragons were grinning and applauding because the true dragon god was back in action. The dragons swiftly charged in, formed a wedge with Sora at its center, and sliced through the demons. They fought valiantly and used every trick they knew in addition to a few powerful techniques that Sora threw about as if he had as much energy as the sun itself. The army eventually dispersed after witnessing Ryujin's apprentice overthrow their powerful leader, and the 4 pit fiends tried to flee, only to be caught in another of Sora's dragon strikes. Sora turned back to his army and unleashed a roar of victory, which his fellows swiftly embraced. The demons were vanquished, and they would never again attack a dragon's domain. Konoha. After a week as the Shinigami took Hidan's soul, Sora and Anko were lying on the Namikaze estate's floor, cuddling, while Naruto and Hana also started cuddling Hana's side as she clung to Naruto. And then the Shinigami reappeared. Oh, Naruto-kun. Yami and Lady Luck have yet to receive their payment, boy. I'm hoping you pay them soon. With a dark chuckle, the Shinigami said, then vanished back into obscurity. What is she talking about? Asked Hana, turning to face Naruto. Naruto began to sweat bullets and Hana's eyes narrowed before she grabbed Naruto and he burst into a puff of smoke. Na-ru-u-u-u-u-u-t-o-o-o-o. As she started searching for her missing husband, she yelled, he needs to explain himself.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.